You?
As ready as I'll ever be. All right, good evening, everybody. Will you join with me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. First item this evening is a public hearing, and I'd like to open a public hearing regarding Chapter 21 of the Town Code to amend no parking to include Mead Street south of Tarrier-Bit Road to Schoolhouse Road. Does anybody wish to speak? All right. Nobody wishing to speak. I would like to make a motion to close this public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt this this amendment to no parking. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Go ahead, Jane.
What?
That's okay.
Discussion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I would like to, so moved. Anthony, you got all you need on that?
I do.
Next, I'd like to open a public hearing regarding Chapter 212 of the Town Code to amend the speed limit from 30 miles an hour to 25 miles an hour on town roads not listed in this chapter. Does anybody wish to speak?
Got a raised hand.
Nobody wish, oh,
No,
sorry, Dan.
no, hold on. We have a raised hand from Terrence Chung.
Chang.
Hi, everyone.
Would you like to speak, Terrence?
Yes, please. Thank you for just 1 minute tonight. This is Terrence Cheng, 25 Scotts Lane in South Salem. I had the opportunity to say a few words 2 weeks ago at the town board meeting. And on behalf of the neighbors and taxpayers in this immediate area on Scotts Lane and Longview, I would just like to restate our support for lowering the speed limits on town roads and protecting streets like ours where we have 11 households and 25 children, and we need to do what we can to protect them. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Terrence.
People should know that I have acted on the town board's resolution to send a letter to the state legislators requesting that they exempt collector roads in the town of Lewisboro via a home rule resolution from the state speed provisions. That would allow us to lower speed limits on Boughton, Main Street in South Salem, Oskalito Road, Spring Hill Lane, and a portion of West Lane. I really hope that we can get this done this time and that I can actually get some action from the State Assembly and State Senate. I'd like to make a motion to enact this reduction in speed limit on town roads. Can I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Done. I'd like to move on to public comment. Who wishes to make a comment?
I see.
Terrence Chang again.
Hi, Terrence.
And Rich Sclaren after that, I think.
Okay,
Yeah?
Terrence first.
Oh,
Yes, please. Go ahead, Terrence.
Oh, you're muted.
Oh, Tony, you have to unmute him.
Ah.
We can be patient.
Hold
This
on.
stuff is tricky.
No, I had a
Tony's taken
little.
on a lot of responsibility as the host these past couple of months, and I really appreciate it, as I know that a lot of residents do, because now you can see us in real time and really soon after, and I think it's been a real, and this is tough. And so Tony just took it on, no questions asked. Thank you, Tony.
You're welcome.
So,
I
thank
had
you
a little
for-
network glitch on my end as well, but go ahead, Terrence.
Thanks for unmuting me, but I think Rich actually had his hand up.
That's
earlier,
okay, go
so
ahead.
Are you
Because
sure?
I don't think he was talking about public comment, but maybe. We'll get to him next. Go ahead.
Okay, so again, this is Terrence Chang, 25 Scotts Lane, South Salem. I'm making a personal statement now, has nothing to do with the speed limit situation that you all have been discussing. So I'll start by saying thank you to Jane and to Dan. At the last town board meeting, the two of you opened up a very difficult but important conversation related to Black Lives Matter and the overarching issues with race in our society. We know these are important issues and maybe even more important in some ways in a community like ours that is 95% white. There's a lot of work to do. It is work that has to happen and it will happen. And I would argue it's incumbent on all of us to join in that work. So my comments now, I hope you take them as feedback and observation. They are a part of what I think is a partnership between the community and the town. So I have the utmost respect for first responders and those who would risk their lives in the work that they do for their communities. I've had conversations recently with Chief Alfano and one of his officers, and I have confidence that our police are there to serve our community to the best of their abilities. I support our police unequivocally, and I want to see them safe, and I want to see them succeed. There are signs up in front of the Lewisboro police station. One is a handmade thin blue line or Blue Lives Matter flag. And then there are two support our police signs on the grass near Boughton Road in front of the station. So here's my observation and my feedback. I don't know who put up the signs, but I can tell you that at a time when the nation and the world are dealing with the strife of racial and social injustice and inequality, these signs are very concerning. Because I've read too many corporate and political statements that don't say Black Lives Matter or don't say the names George Floyd or Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and now Rayshard Brooks. Because of that, these signs in front of our police station are worrisome. These days, not saying Black Lives Matter and not saying the names of these victims is perceived as a repudiation of this movement. It is a tacit way of saying Black lives don't matter. The thin blue line flag and saying things like all lives matter is also perceived as a repudiation, a dog whistle, if you will. To have signs like this in front of our police station in a community that is 95% white, in my opinion, is dangerous. The fact that these signs are on public property is even more troubling because it might seem to some that our police or our town board are okay with social and racial injustice, or you are okay with polarizing and politicizing a human movement for justice and turning it into an us versus them situation. I don't think that's the case, but there is sometimes a big difference between intent and impact. So I can't tell you the intent of whoever put up those signs, but I can speak to the impact. Personally, I don't think supporting BLM means you can't support the police. I see what's happening to the police in our country. I support our police and first responders, and I support BLM because these are human matters. So I'm not here to tell anyone what to do, but I am here to tell you how at least this one person of color, feels about this situation, because there's a ton of work to do and we need to do it and we need to work together. Thank you.
Thanks, Terrence.
Terrence, when you passed, did you pass the police station on the way here today? Oh, you're still at home, aren't you? Sorry, I had actually thought you were in the townhouse.
Muscle memory.
So you didn't pass the police station. I'm hopeful that they're already down. Second, the town board will discuss this evening whether they weren't put up by the police. They were put up by a third party. Don't know who. Nobody knows who, as far as I know. And the police hesitated to take down signs put up by somebody else. They've been reassured about that. I hope that the town board this evening will simply restate the tradition of the town and possibly the law of the town, I don't know which, that there should be no signs which could be construed as political on any town property.
So having said that, I think that also, just to build upon that, I think that you may be referring to that somebody, and I don't remember exactly the details, but I do know that maybe somebody put a homemade sign up that said Black Lives Matter also right in front of the police station at one point. And so Black Lives Matter, I totally support that statement 100%. Fly the flag outside your house, put it right on your lawn, let's do it. But we aren't putting signs on other people's property. And the police do see also that as, you know, that's on their property. So I'm all for the Black Lives Matter, and I'm all for stating it loud and clear. So please do, just please keep it on your property.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a few other hands that are up. I'm gonna go to, Lauren, Lauren, go ahead.
I think Rich was next. Rich,
Rich?
did you want to talk?
Mute, you're unmute.
I think that Tony, you might need to unmute him.
No, he's got to do it.
Oh, okay, Rich, yeah, there you go.
Okay, good. Yeah, good evening. My hand was up about the public hearing. I just wanted to confirm, which I guess it's already been addressed, but my question was in Wild Oaks, is that within the town roads not listed in the chapter?
Yeah.
Wild Oaks, those are town roads, right? Or except for your road?
No, my question is, are the roads in Wild Oaks Road, Park Road, et cetera, are they within the purview of what was being passed here? Okay,
yes.
I just wanted to confirm that. Okay.
I was just making an exception for your particular road, which I think is not a town road.
Yes, at the end, it becomes private at the end, but okay. I just wanted to confirm that because I support the change in the law. I think that's a great idea as far as addressing speed issues, particularly in Wild Oaks, is really important based upon the same issues as other parts of town, based upon a lot of children, roads where there's people going to school bus, et cetera, particularly in school year. It's a great idea, and I'm glad it's moving forward.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Peter, you never closed the public comment.
I didn't.
Public hearing. Right.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion.
With public comment, but
why do I see all these hands
hearing,
raised in? If you look at the participants, I think maybe people are waiting to speak.
yes, they are. So did we close the public hearing, Tony? I'm sorry, Janet.
Yeah,
Close the public hearing.
Peter did not close the public hearing.
All right, I'd like to go back to the speeding issue and to close the public and to ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Tony. Oh, Jane,
sorry,
thank
Tony.
you. The two of you in some order. Anthony, our motion to adopt that as a law still stands?
I think, Tony, you need to unmute Anthony.
No, Anthony's got to unmute himself.
On your end, Anthony. He strongly feels it's not. And
I need to do it again?
No.
No,
Okay,
I kept getting a message saying the host is not allowing you to unmute. So I couldn't unmute, but now it flipped back and I could do it.
Silly glitch.
Do I have to go back and pass that again?
I'm sorry, Peter, your question was?
Apparently, I forgot to close the public hearing on speed limits. I have now done that. Do I?
Then you should make a motion to adopt.
Again?
Yes.
All right. All right, I make a motion to adopt the change to Chapter 212 of the Town Code to amend the speed limit from 30 to 25 on town roads not listed in this chapter. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Does anybody else wish to make a public comment?
Yeah, I have, let me, I'll start at the top. Lauren.
Okay. This is Lauren Gray, Lake Truesdale. I'm making a public comment about this proposed cell phone tower. I've read through the agenda and all the documents, and I ask that we take a breath to re-examine this. We have this beautiful small town, and regardless of whether we put the tower at the Salt Dome or if we put it behind the townhouse at the recycling center, it's going to be seen from the horse farms, from the cemetery, from our historic town, and it will just absolutely destroy our little South Salem. Looking at the maps, everybody on Lake Truesdale just about is gonna be able to see this tower. And I don't understand why we need it. I actually have cell phone coverage and I live on Lake Truesdale. So I was wondering if in this presentation tonight, we will be seeing coverage maps because we do have coverage here. So I'm questioning why we even need this tower. And at this point, I'm asking these questions because I know I'm not allowed to make comments later, but I would like to know from Homeland Towers if these sites, if we know if they even work yet, or if we've just done the drawings. Also, the drawings are for figure A1 and figure B1 have notes on the right-hand side that state the viewshed areas are not definitive. The viewshed mapping provides a general understanding of where the proposed project is theoretically visible based on regional topography, forest and building coverage, etc. And it's based on 2016. So this is my understanding from reading that, is this is not an accurate representation, up-to-date representation, because it continues with that the land cover condition viewshed area includes the screening effect of intervening vegetation and buildings. Vegetated areas and buildings were manually digitized from 2016 1-foot resolution digital ortho imagery. All digitized tree cover is assumed to be 40 feet tall, and digitized buildings are assumed to be 15 feet tall. I'm not quite sure what that means, but I know since 2016, we've had several storms and we've lost many trees. And I think if we're really gonna consider these spots, which once again, I don't understand why we even need to, there should be more accurate representation of the topography in the area. We'd also like to have the history of what's been done to date regarding cell phone towers in Lewisboro, and to see coverage maps with the carriers noted so we can see how this was picked. We'd also like to see a listing of the areas that have already been looked at for in Lewisboro for this current site, and if they worked or not, when it was looked at last, and if it can be revisited, such as the firehouse. We'd also like to ask if it includes Mountain Lakes Camp and the maintenance shop there. Perhaps that location somewhere in Mountain Lakes Camp would cover the other areas that may need to be covered. If Homeland Towers could also explain Verizon and AT&T, why they're both not put on at the same time, because that would certainly help coverage with the existing towers. And we'd like to know if the towers will be monopoles or monopines. What other areas in Lewisboro still need a tower, or is this the last one? Both sites, once again, ruin the views for homes on Lake Truesdale and on Main Street, which is part of our historic town.
Excuse me, Lauren, but there are going to be at least 2 public hearings on this.
Okay,
And quite honestly, if everybody makes speeches as long as this, we're never going to get to hear about what Homeland Towers has come up with.
I'm just speaking for
I
a
know.
lot of people who are on this call for the first time, Peter, who have not been here, and I'm trying to stop redundancies. Okay. So my last comment is we've already lost an elementary school in this area, and we really do not need to have anything else bring down our property values by putting a tower at either the Salt Dome or at the recycling center. Thank you.
Does somebody else wish to speak?
Yes, Catherine Foley.
Oh.
Hi, okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. My name is Catherine Foley. My white affluent family moved to South Salem in 1982. I attended Meadow Pond and am a 1996 graduate of John Jay High School. I later was a town reporter for the Lewisboro Ledger and a volunteer firefighter with the South Salem Fire Department. I am here tonight because I would like to speak to the intergenerational legacy of racism and bigotry in Lewisboro and command you as public servants to take immediate action in addressing this head on with deep, uncomfortable honesty and self-awareness. I know that several of you are making earnest attempts to center this issue with the board, and I am relieved for that, but frankly, it is not enough. We need to see a strong, unified showing of conscious and courageous leadership by the town board. The comments made by your leader, Supervisor Peter Parsons, at the last meeting were atrociously ignorant and tone deaf. Peter, you seem to believe that because we don't, quote, have a large Black population, end quote, that you don't need to speak to the movement for Black lives. Well, you do. Even if not a single Black person lived in Lewisboro, it would still be a bastion of white supremacy. And that's what this is about. Dismantling white power, privilege, and bias across all town institutions and organizations and within yourselves. You said the best way to address this would be to build token housing for people of color and then designate those families as the welcoming committee for other people of color.
With due respect, I said the first step.
Could you not interrupt me? Could you not interrupt my statement, please? Could you please let me continue with my statement? Could you please let me continue with my statement without interrupting me?
But you're misquoting me.
I sincerely implore you to stop making harmful, violent statements like this. You do not become anti-racist institutions by creating racial diversity and tasking people of color to look after their own. You eradicate systemic racism by addressing it from within. I also need to speak to the highly problematic letter released by Police Chief David Alfano regarding the murder of George Floyd. This letter was laden with microaggression and chock full of the volatile racist propaganda we see coming directly from the current administration in the White House. Instead of naming your support for the movement for Black lives, you spoke about violence, disobedience, and riots and their emotional toll. What about the toll of 400 years of oppression? What about the toll of slavery never truly ending in this country for Black people? You call yourself an apolitical police department, yet you have Blue Lives Matter banners. As of an hour ago, there was still one of these banners up, displayed prominently in front of your station. In the last meeting, your screen went blank during the discussion of Black Lives Matter. Do Black Lives matter to you, Chief Alfano? I would sincerely like to know, have you examined your own white privilege and racism? I would consider this crucial for a white police department that issues a disproportionate amount of tickets to people of color. I want to invite each and every one of you to consider what it will mean to lead Lewisboro out of its history of racism and white power. You have a lot of work to do. This will mean addressing your own implicit bias and uprooting the oppressor within you. This will mean looking at how racism continues to flourish in your institutions and communities, especially within white male-dominated organizations like the police and fire departments. You will need to address the rampant domestic violence in your town, which is itself an extension of white supremacy culture. You will need to find the money to hire outside experts to consult your board and lay out a long-term plan and vision for an inclusive town that works tirelessly to center and uplift your minority and marginalized populations. Do the work. Fight for racial justice and equity. Black Lives Matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Next on the list here is Mickey DiNicola.
Sorry, how do you get
You
on
have
the
to
list?
unmute me.
You are unmuted.
Oh, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay.
1 minute. Lewis, you're on my list. I have Eric and Lewis. So I guess what we're going to do is just try to keep tracks of the hands we see and do it that way. So you're on my list though, Lewis.
Thank you.
Okay, yep. All right, so Lewis will go next. Go ahead, Mickey.
Okay, I am revisiting my issue from a little over a year ago when I came to the board and had a noise complaint, and I was told that it would be looked into, the current town codes concerning noise. Yesterday, the issue arose again, and in the wake of the pandemic, the dirt that flew over here was also an issue. I did get a Lewisboro police officer to come here and go over and stop the noise and the dirt and whatever was going on next door to me. But my purpose for stating this now is it's been over a year. Has anything been looked into or decided? Because this is becoming a real problem. And it's been a while since anybody's gotten back to me. So if I turn my camera on right now, you will see me sitting on my patio, and the issue behind me was less than 50 feet away from where I'm talking to you right now.
Yeah.
Starting at 8 in the morning and ending when the police officer went over there and kindly called me back to make sure that they did stop disturbing the peace.
This is fair enough, Mickey. I remember this well, and it's been a long time since I've followed up with you on it for sure, or been in any group communications about it. So I'm happy to loop back to this and see, you know, go back and remember the details of it and discuss it with the board. Maybe, you know, at another time. I can't talk.
The police officer told me that he did a full report.
Okay, great.
He called me back and said, I want to make sure they followed my instructions. And I said, yes, they did. Right now, all I hear are rakes. But he was actually shocked when he pulled into my driveway.
Okay.
This was coming from behind my house, and he was in front of it. And he said, wow, I can't believe that. I said, look at the dust cloud that I'm breathing in. And he immediately drove next door and called me back an hour later. I was very impressed. His name is Officer Gray. I don't know if he's new or...
Okay.
But he showed up in a Lewisboro police car. I did follow the instructions I was given last year, which were to call the dispatch office, and they did send someone over here. So.
Well, great. Okay, well, that's good.
Well, it's great, except I told the gentleman that I was trying to be Christian. I went to church and said, if I come back and it's not making any noise or dirt, I will not call. But right now, there is a tractor trailer unloading as I'm speaking to you, which is after 7 o'clock. And I don't know if you can hear it banging, but probably not, because I'm sitting about 50, 60 feet away from it. But
and just to be clear, Mickey,
matter of being a good neighbor,
Right.
My neighbor below me, neither one of us would dare to blow leaves on a Sunday. We just have respect for each other. This is an issue of commercial versus residential, and being an unusual circumstance, I think that there has to be some caveat in here. I did look in my code book, which I purchased in 1999 before it was online, and there is a section about emission of dust and particulate matter, which follows the noise section. So it's a lawbreaker. I am powerless to do anything about it, but I just thought I would revisit it now since I did not hear back from anybody and it's been more than a year. But thank you, Jane. If you can get back to me, I would immensely appreciate it.
And just to be clear, Mickey, you're referring to your neighbor who is Mercedes.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. I try not to name drop, but seeing as how I'm the unusual circumstance in Lewisboro, you know, even Acme doesn't back up to houses as close as this is to me. So,
right.
You should have heard it, Tony. Where you were, you should have heard it.
Yeah, I know. We spoke yesterday. So yeah, the chainsaw at 8 in the morning. Yeah, not a good thing.
Okay, thank you. The officer did do his duty and actually even called me back to confirm that they followed his orders. So that was a plus. But thank you for listening.
Thank you. He is not that new a police officer in town.
I have very little experience with police officers, thank God. However, in this case, he was welcome here. He even got out and petted my dog, so I'm a happy camper.
Okay.
Okay, next is Lewis.
Yes. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Peter, I am going to speak about the cell tower. I know they're going to make a presentation, but I think I'd like to make a couple preliminary comments about the whole idea of a cell tower on town land. My first point is that I'm not clear on why the town feels it has an obligation to provide a site under some kind of lease arrangement for Homeland Towers to place another tower to provide coverage along Route 35. There are already 3 towers within a 5-mile distance from Route 123 at the 5th Division, excuse me, from Route 23 to Route 121 at the 5th Division. This would add a 4th cell tower providing coverage on Route 35. I'm also don't think it's a particularly good idea that to be concerned about a minor gap in coverage on 35. What this essentially will be doing is encouraging people to use their cell phones while they're driving their automobiles. Not something I think the town should be doing. I think also the minor fiscal impact that the lease income will provide to the town will probably be offset by the decrease in market value of houses within close distance to this cell tower. I'm sure there is a certiorari attorney available in Westchester County who would be more than happy to take on 30 or 40 or 50 cases against the town to reduce the value, the assessed value of their houses based on the proximity to the cell tower. I'm sure that would more than offset whatever minor fiscal impact the lease would have, lease payments would have to the town. Secondly, there are 2 tower locations proposed. I'm sure Homeland Towers is going to address them. And I looked at their presentation drawings and the letter from Saratoga Associates. I would point out, with respect to the location at the Highway Department, there are significant problems with that having to do with zoning requirements and requirements of the Historic Preservation Act. They point out in their letter that the cemetery at the South Salem Presbyterian Church is on the National Register of Historic Places. and that this tower at the highway department would adversely affect that site. Secondly, the highway site is within the setback areas of the special character architectural overlay district and would have to go through the ACARC process. And I think if one looks closely at what the standards are in the ACARC regulations and guidance and also the legislative intent, a cell tower couldn't possibly meet the standards of ACARC along the Main Street architectural overlay corridor. I'm not even certain that the cell tower at the Salt Dome site would meet that, but it certainly would be infinitely better than one at the highway department. I think that's about it that I have to say. I'd like to hear what the Homeland Tower says, but again, I'd like to reiterate, I don't think the town has an obligation to provide a lease agreement on town property to provide coverage for a cell tower company.
I'd like to comment.
Sorry, who's that?
Ted.
I'm the chairman of the Antenna Advisory Board.
Yes, say your last name.
Sohanye.
Sohanye. It's Ted Sohanye.
Hi, Ted.
That's correct. I would like to clarify several issues that have been brought up by Lauren and Lewis and state that several sites have already been evaluated and looked at by myself and the Antenna Advisory Board. I agree. It's a bit different than what you would expect, but you have to consider this. And in this case, not only am I a resident, but I have to be an advocate for the town, as well as consider what the Homeland Towers and the carriers need. They have a hole in coverage. Now people go, okay, I have coverage. Well, if you lose coverage on Route 35, which is the key revenue maker in this case, there is what's known as a timeout timer. So if you're making a call, and it's an important call, all of a sudden you lose connectivity or lose coverage, if you will. It's not a high site. It's meant to fill in a hole. And in this case, the Salt Dome or the highway department, the other site, would fill that requirement. It's not so much to advance all coverage, but rather to provide necessary backup coverage should a call be lost. And that is very important. Call is lost. Imagine this, if you are dialing 911 on a cell phone and your call is lost. Do you want that to be in your situation? That's it.
Can I just have a response briefly?
Go ahead, Louis.
Yes, as I pointed out, yes, I understand there's a gap in coverage, but the gap in coverage is on Route 35. As Mr. Sohanye says, I'm not sure one should be making a very important call while you're driving along Route 35. And to the extent that that may or may not happen, it's going to be quite very, 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 very infrequently. Just because the cell companies feel like, no, there's a gap in coverage for some brief period along Route 35, doesn't mean that the town has the obligation to provide the site to take care of that gap in coverage. As I said, there are already 3 cell towers within a 5-mile distance along Route 35. This would add a 4th one. And I would suggest that putting this cell tower here is going to reduce property values, and I would be very pleased to see somebody representing a lot of property owners with tax certiorari's against the town for reduction in the value of their homes as a result of this location.
Can I just point out for the audience that if the taxes go down on one set of houses, they just go up on another set of houses, so that, you know, it's just a shift in who pays the taxes, just to be clear.
That's not true.
I wonder if it would be helpful to have some kind of forum or discussion about this with the Antenna Advisory Board and interested residents and perhaps whoever liaises to that board. Or
I'm the chairman of the Antenna Advisory Board.
Yes, and we also have a town board liaison at your assistance.
Do they know anything about RF technology?
I'm not even sure who the liaison is, Ted. I apologize.
Right.
I know that I'm not the liaison. I know that's true, that I am not, because no would be the answer. But it was just a suggestion to move this conversation on further, because it sounds like there's a rich conversation to have here, and yet public comment
I would like
so long is not the place.
Jane, I would like to just explain a couple of things to everybody that's talking about this.
Well, that's
First
why it would
off,
be good to have a meeting, right?
No,
That's what
it's not necessary.
Oh.
May I say why?
Yeah.
I'll explain why right now.
Okay, great.
We have explored all the public-owned sites, that is to say town-owned sites in that coverage area. And I loved one site, but I knew there was going to be problems. And sure enough, there would be interference problems with the Leon Levy Preserve site. So we were looking at, we did look, as some have mentioned, at the site up on Mountain Lakes Camp. I'm quite familiar with it. And I said, if the county doesn't allow it, that's a county site, not a Lewisboro site. And they said, no. So what shall we do in that case? I'm not for or against, nor is my committee for and against any specific alternative. But we have, and I have personally, as an RF professional of over 35 years, explored every town site, every town-owned property in that specific coverage area, and couldn't find anything else. Now, if someone else would offer something where there is a decent area of coverage with a view, let me know. I will tell you right now, you cannot have the South Salem Firehouse as a site. Why? Because the town park site,
it's too close to the town park site, right? Is that right?
I'm sorry?
It's too close to the town park site.
Correct.
Correct, yeah. I had heard you mention that as well, the South Salem Fire Department. I do want you to know that was considered the last round. We did do this in Cross River kind of recently. One of my questions is I was curious about what you thought about that project. But I will turn the floor back over to Ted here.
But the bottom line here is
that maybe we wait until the Homeland, we ask people to defer the.
I have no problem. I want to hear what their presentation is, but I would believe that when looking at this, what are the least number of people that are affected? Someone will be affected. Plain and simple, there's no getting around it, unless, of course, you know of some place in Lewisboro with a beautiful vista, which no one owns, that we can have a site on. Please tell me about that one.
So,
hey, Ted, it's Lauren. Is this a legal requirement that we have to have this? Because we haven't had anything for 25 years.
Yes. The answer is yes. It's
so
called,
yes, it has to be on 35?
No, the requirement is that to provide certain coverage. And by the way, Lauren, to bring back a comment you made before, this is not, as well as other people that have brought this up, This is not a matter of, well, the terrible cell phone coverage people want this. Well, why do they want it? There's a reason. The reason is that there is a hole in the coverage on a major thoroughfare, and according to the Antenna Advisory Board's charter, we are to facilitate coverage on the major thoroughfares in town. And Route 35, well, need I say more?
Well, no, I understand that, Ted. It's just, once again, we have not had this before. Some of us moved here for the charm of those things, knowing we didn't have a hospital close by like we did in New York City, knowing we didn't have cell phone tower coverage, having beautiful horse farms, having beautiful areas. Now I need to be looking at a tower for coverage. I'm just trying to understand why it's so necessary.
Right. Are you going to see it?
So I think this is, we need all these input, but why don't we let ourselves get to the Homeland Towers presentation?
Yes, so I agree.
A lot of the questions that people might be asking would assumedly be answered during that presentation. And I would recommend maybe to the board then that we allow for another comment session after that, just so people can immediately have a chance to react or clarify things.
This is Carol. Carol, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. My name is Jane Primmett, and I'm on the town board, and I'd really like to say something. I really have been sitting and listening, and I want to hear what you have to say. We're going to have to mute everybody, I think.
I think
that we can just keep doing this. Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me. I do get to talk. I'm sorry. This is not.
So if you let me continue, I will take 2 minutes, and I will be done.
But I haven't gotten 2 minutes, and this is part of
I have been waiting
board meeting, and I haven't gotten.
That's exactly my point. Is that the residents of this town need to know.
Peter, you need to run this meeting, honestly.
Of the Salt Dome property and how it has maintained itself and polluted the surrounding area. I mean, you can't deny that.
Carol,
maybe there's many people here who don't even know about the history of the Salt Dome property and how it's polluted the Wacabuck River and the Wallace Nature Preserve that was donated in Vice President Henry Wallace's name.
Carol, thank you for that. We received your email with all the detail. What I would like to do is the people that have raised their hands, I'd like to give them an opportunity to speak.
Oh, I don't have a picture, so I can't raise my hand. I can only
How about me? Can I have an opportunity to speak or? Yeah, great, thank you. So I just wanted to say, Dan, following up on your plan and what you had proposed, I think that's a really good idea to open it back up after the Homeland Towers presentation. But on the agenda, something that didn't make it, something from 2 weeks ago, which was we were going to relook at the welcoming resolution and we were going to update it. And I took on as a task to go ahead and spearhead that and come back with something to you all tonight. And that's not formally on the agenda. So I would, I in my head had placed it after public comment, but we never know what's going to happen during these things. And so I'm happy to move the meeting along at any pace that feels comfortable to everybody, but I wanted to make sure that an agenda item gets on there. So thank you so much, Lauren, for listening. And I'm so thank you.
And this is still Carol Cernak, and I would still like my opportunity to speak.
Carol, can I get back to you? Because I have other people that have been waiting. So
I've been waiting too. I mean, I've been on the meeting since the very beginning.
I know, but you're repeating what you emailed us, and we received all that information.
But hang on, we got your email. Have not heard what I emailed to you. Exactly.
Okay, go ahead, Carol.
Okay, so since when the Salt Dome was put in on that site, it sits in a wetland zone, so they had to acquire more property to be able to meet the setback. They did that by getting a piece of property off of Echo Farm. Echo Farm was promised that they would be able to use that property for grazing and their animals for forever. That's what was promised. Mrs. Wallace donated the nature preserve that adjoins the Salt Dome property in honor of her late husband, who was Vice President Henry Wallace. Due to the town's lack of commitment to proper oversight, that spot has been polluted twice. That stream that runs through that nature preserve runs behind Gossett's, through Gossett's farm and down into the Wacabuck River, which runs, as we all know, because we're all environmentalists, it runs into the Cross River Reservoir. I don't believe the town has the capability of working at that site and not polluting it again.
Okay, thank you for that, Carol. We'll take a look at that. Next is
just to clarify,
Thank you, Carol. I do
those
appreciate
pollution events were salt issues, or were they like equipment leakage or something?
Oh, no, they're improper storage of salt.
Okay.
Just complete mismanagement of the site without any regard for the surrounding area. It's in a wetland zone.
all right. So we'll take a look at that. But thank you very much for the detail in your email, Carol. We'll definitely take a look and get back to you. Okay, next, Eric Perry.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, really quick before I get into my statement, I'm like trembling. This is ridiculous how much time we're taking up talking about a cell tower and how the disrespectful manner in which certain people of the board are addressing folks talking about substantive issues of racial injustice and cutting people off during their statements, yet other people can have long-form discussions about cell towers. It's absolutely ridiculous. Something else to call out from Catherine Foley's statement was the fact that Dave Alfano's screen was off last meeting. It's still off this meeting. It shows that he has a complete disregard for any kind of dialogue about racial justice in our community. So I would like to invite you to turn your screen on if that is not the case. But if you do not, I can only assume that you don't care about what we have to say. I'm going to get into my statement now.
Real quick. I'm eating,
ahead, Dave.
Listening to this whole meeting. So if you want to see me chewing and eating, then I'll turn my screen on. That's the only reason. Same thing with the last Monday with that other meeting. I'm eating dinner. I worked all day. Okay. I am entitled to my meal.
Okay. It is good to know that you're here. I did not know that previously. This is my first town board meeting. I'm going to get into my statement now. Hi all, my name is Eric Perry. I use he, his pronouns, and I am joining you remotely from Katona. I want to start by saying thank you to those members of the town board of Lewisboro who are reflecting critically about the momentous crossroads we have come to as a nation and your commitment to disrupting the white supremacy that continues to afflict our community. I wish that I could say that the education I received from John Jay High School prepared me to grapple with our country's enduring legacy of systemic racism, but I unfortunately did not come to terms with the whitewashed version of history I was taught until much later in my academic career. As such, I want to take a quick moment to share a story about the roots of modern day policing that sowed the seeds for the current groundswell of support for the movement for Black lives. The first city to institute a police force was Boston, Massachusetts in the year of 1838. Home to one of the largest commercial ports at the time, local merchants had previously contracted independent security firms to ensure safe passage of deliveries to their places of business. In 1838, someone had the bright idea to transfer the associated cost to taxpayers by convincing citizens that a police force was for the collective good. Fast forward to the end of the 19th century, and businessmen throughout the states had both connections to politicians and an image of the kinds of people most likely to go on strike and disrupt their workforce. So it's no coincidence that by the late 1880s, all major US cities had police forces. Fears of labor union organizers and of large waves of Catholics, Irish, Italians, Germans, and Eastern European immigrants who looked and acted differently from the people who had dominated cities before drove the call for preservation of law and order, or at least the version of it promoted by dominant interests. The rhetoric employed in Police Chief Alfano's statement concerning the current social upheaval centers the emotional toll taken on all citizens by the civil disobedience and rioting the modern day lynching of George Floyd has caused. Regardless of political affiliation, I've seen many individuals from our towns posting words of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King about the importance of nonviolent civil disobedience. However, I believe the following quote reflects how he would respond to the current predicament we find ourselves in. And I quote, "Certain conditions continue to exist in our society, which must be condemned as vigorously as we condemn riots. But in the final analysis, a riot is the language of the unheard. And what is it that America has failed to hear. It has failed to hear that the plight of the Negro poor has worsened over the last few years. It has failed to hear that the promises of freedom and justice have not been met. It has failed to hear that large segments of white society are more concerned about tranquility and the status quo than about justice, equality, and humanity. And so, in a real sense, our nation's summers of riots are caused by our nation's winters of delay. And as long as America postpones justice, we stand in the position of having these recurrences of violence and riots over and over again. Social justice and progress are the absolute guarantors of riot prevention. Thank you. I yield my time.
Well, for once, although I am chairman of the Antenna Advisory Board, I was a cop. And what you're talking about, Julia, makes no sense. I've been there, and Ms.
so
Foley, another one.
Peter, somebody needs
We wanna
to mute
enough of this.
everybody because
This
we are
is-
getting into more problematic territory because people don't want to.
Well,
they
then-
don't want to follow order, and
Ted,
there
good night.
should be some. There are open law meetings. There are open meetings laws about how long you're supposed to talk. We don't follow them. That's fine. But we can't have. I mean, we can't have the supervisor on mute, and none of us can.
I will.
All right, let me go to the
I
next
will
person, Ted.
relinquish everything right now and mute myself.
I think Richard Ostroff had his hand up.
Yes, he's next. Go ahead, Richard.
Yep, keep going down that list.
Richard?
If he's still interested in speaking, let's see. Yep. Oh, there we go.
I want to acknowledge the last speaker and say that Black Lives Matter and that stuff is important. However, I really am here to sort of hitchhike on the back of what Lou said. I thought the points were well put.
This is the place for both of these discussions. If we're going to be having one of them in this public comment, we should be having both of them. So feel free to speak and take your time.
Okay. Yeah. I think that there would be some very, very loud dissent regarding the tower. But the one point that I don't think was made was this is an 18th century town. Okay. This is a beautiful little town. And the highest structure is 2 stories. Maybe there's a couple of 3-story homes. Okay. The cell tower is 120 feet tall. 120 feet of metal. That will be seen from historic sites from all over the town. And the thought of putting that up in this town is, I think, a really bad idea. The kind of income that we would get from this would you could probably make it up from people donating to the town to not have that thing put up, because that thing will blight this town. People will see it coming and going because it's the tallest thing around. 120 feet, that's 12 stories.
Have you ever heard of what's known as general public safety?
Can I finish my statement, please? Am I being seen? Am I being?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Richard.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Let's finish. Let's wrap it up.
Can somebody help Peter with the mute?
Yeah. This is a beautiful, quiet town. Children play in the streets, people ride horses. And to have that monstrosity put up to fill a hole so people can talk on their cell phones is, I think, leaning toward the ridiculous. I yield the floor.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Let's go on to Alice.
Does anybody else wish to speak?
We have a bunch of hands raised still, so let's keep working through.
Okay, let's keep it moving.
And
2
please, if you're
minutes
not
each max.
speaking, mute yourself, please.
Okay, I'll mute myself.
Go ahead,
Oh, well,
Allison.
not
Yes,
necessarily the
mute yourself if
board,
you're
but
not speaking.
certainly.
And
Allison.
we hear you. We're not going to be able to get anything effectively done. So if you find yourself repeating what somebody else said, you can just say that you agree with them. That would be helpful.
Thanks, Jane. Allison, go ahead.
Hi, it's actually Callie Bauer.
Oh, Callie, yeah. Sorry.
I totally do agree with what Lauren and Lou have said previously, but I did just want to mention, I don't know if everyone has taken a look at everything posted on the town website with the photos that they put up of these proposed poles. The viewscapes between Farview and Echo Farm, which are two of the most photographed farms, and on the website currently, on the Town of Lewisboro website, would be destroyed. I mean, you see that pole from all areas of the hamlet of South Salem, and you see it from all areas by the Salt Dome too. One thing about the Salt Dome site is that that is an open field. It's a meadow. There are no trees around that area, currently grazed on by horses now, which we were told that we would be able to do for eternity as long as it was a farm. But there is no hiding it. There's no camouflage at all. It's just, I would like to see the coverage maps. I want to see what other spots have been addressed and were, you know, said that they would not be viable. But one thing I think we should consider is that there must be some other spots, maybe not town owned, that might work. Echo Farm is protected by a non-development easement. The town board, a previous town board, you know, agreed to that. And now we have a town board that is wanting to put up a cell tower, you know, on property that used to be Echo Farm. That is still a pasture. So anyway, I'm not for either of the sites. I would like to maybe try to keep looking for other sites and see the maps that, the coverage maps that are available now. They are not on the website.
Yeah, they'll be forthcoming, but thank you very much, Callie. All right, let's move on to Mina Shah. I think you're muted on your end, Mina. There you go.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I'd like to echo some of Terrence Cheng's, Catherine Foley's, and Eric Perry's comments regarding Black Lives Matter, the movement for Black lives, and equity and inclusion issues in Lewisboro. I'll keep my statement brief, as Mr. Cheng, Ms. Foley, and Mr. Perry articulated many feelings that I also have quite eloquently. In addition to all that's been mentioned on this topic, I would like to see the town board support the Board of Education in terms of prioritizing diverse hiring in our district, overhauling the curriculum for K through 12 to have more culturally responsive pedagogy, and implementing any other initiatives related to racial justice, equity, and inclusion. I'd also like to see this board make an open, honest, and thorough commitment to diversifying the demographics of this town through providing access to affordable housing. Further, moving forward in each person's power as members on this board, I urge you to encourage and support diverse candidates in running for office, both locally and at the district's level. I'd also like to call attention to the fact that lots of folks on this call care about this issue, many of whom might not feel comfortable speaking tonight because of the confrontational nature of the tone that's been set here. But this issue still ought to be prioritized, not only because it's an important issue to many residents, but because it is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mina.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Sebastian.
Hi, I'm Sebastian Singh. I live at 4 Manor Drive in Goldens Bridge.
Hi, Sebastian.
Hi. I use he, him pronouns. I hope that you guys can respect those. I, like Mina, would like to echo and amplify the voices of Terrence Cheng, Catherine Foley, Eric Perry, and I would also like to echo Mina. And my own brief statement is very brief. Caring about a cell tower is a self-isolationist viewpoint. We have huge things happening in this country, in this state, in this county right now, and caring about property value is a really tone-deaf kind of response. I urge everyone here to think about what really matters and how human lives are important to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian.
Thank you.
Lauren? Is that Lauren Gray again? Okay. How about Alex? Alex.
Hey, yes. Can you
Go
hear
ahead,
me?
Alex. Yes.
Yes.
I just, very quick, I just would like to congratulate a lot of the young people who have been very brave to speaking up today. And I'd like to just implore the board to act with similar bravery. And many of you were elected here for your visions of the future, and we implore you that now is the time to perhaps enact some of those. I also just want to briefly pivot to the cell tower, as it does affect me and my family. Very briefly, just to say we'd like another public hearing for it if that is in the offing, where it can be discussed. I think some of Ted's points that he put forward perhaps are not representative or indicative of the wider community. I thank the board. I also had a very brief question about the leaf blower law, what was the update on that? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex.
Maybe should we take just a quick comment about the leaf blower thing? We've been trying to get input from the industry people, and just finished up collecting a set of data on Sunday, and we haven't had a chance to really go through it internally, and we still intend to send out a survey for residents as well, to just to help us, orient on this. So it's still up in the air. We don't have a proposal to vote on at this point.
Okay. Thanks, Dan. Jeremy Zittimer.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeremy Zittimer. My pronouns are he, him. I'm calling you tonight from Golden's Bridge, and I'm a proud graduate of John Jay High School, class of 2011. I'm proud of my school district for many reasons. The individualized attention teachers offered students was incredible. Our commitment to music and the arts at the time was best in class. Our athletic program was a force to be reckoned with, and we made a remarkable effort to ensure that our students had bright futures ahead of them when they graduated. But things were far from perfect, and far worse for some than others. I remember my white friends shouting the N-word at each other in the hallways, teachers encouraging students to openly argue in class that women should be subservient to men, Black and transgender students attempting suicide, and boys assaulting each other on buses and in locker rooms as they threw anti-gay slurs at each other, so frequently that as a gay man myself, I was too terrified to come out in high school for fear that during my own graduation speech, someone would undeniably shout the F word at me in front of 2,000 people. So why am I so proud of my school district? Because in the last few weeks, in light of the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Tony McDade, Rayshard Brooks, and Ahmaud Arbery, teachers, administrators, and district leaders have begun to acknowledge the full depth of the racism and bigotry, especially anti-Black racism, that has long been pervasive in the culture and curriculum of our schools. They have admitted with humility just how much they have to learn in order to become actively and effectively anti-racist. And beyond just admitting how far they have to go, they have made active, specific, thorough commitments to create a bold, new anti-racist world for students in Katona-Lewisboro. The finer details are yet to be determined, but the sincerity of their commitment is there, and it's loud. And now we need the same from our town board. The next few months are going to call many of our everyday practices and policies into question. The way we manage our schools, the way we employ our police, the way we do or do not welcome affordable housing into our largely white, largely affluent communities. The town board, as representatives of not just 95% of our community, but the full 100% of our community, will have to humbly reckon with the full weight of the casual and systemic racism that is endemic to our neighborhoods, our schools, our institutions, and our public spaces. At the last town board meeting, board member Dan Welsh implored us all that we need a medium for public dialogue or open public meeting or forum dedicated to the subject of Black Lives Matter. Tonight, I would like our town to go one step further and establish a fully resourced, long-term committee of town board and community members to take a full inventory of the cultural, institutional, and legislative racial inequities in our town, and then begin work with local community members to figure out how to remedy those inequities for good. Many of us are only a few weeks into this conversation and don't yet know which directions to take or what language to use. That's understandable. But we have to be bold enough to display the humility that our school district's leaders have already begun to embody, and make a verbal commitment tonight to form a long-term committee devoted to evaluating and eradicating racial inequity and injustice in our town. I look forward to your leadership on this issue. I look forward to seeing the enthusiastic participation of the many community members on this call, including those who came to speak on other issues this evening. And I look forward to continuing a bold and direct dialogue with you, our town board, until these longstanding issues in our community are, after hundreds of years, finally solved. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Jeremy.
So I would like to address what you said, because you're just kind of beating us to the punch a little bit. I started on the board in 2017, and one of the first initiatives I tried to begin was a town committee for diversity and inclusion. At that time, I just wasn't able to kind of gather any kind of base of support around that issue, and I was discouraged from doing so and said it would be distracting from the work that I was trying to do, and I didn't want to be the person always talking about those issues and things of that nature. But I'm happy to say that Ms. Castellano has come forward and made the same suggestion, and she's been more targeted in saying, I would like Jane and I to develop this committee, and I would like to do it at this time. And so she did come with that about a week ago, but the way that this is all unfolding, it's a lot to unpack all at the same time. Sure. And so it's just, the conversation is going so fast, and it's hard to keep up, and it's hard to set a tone when there's, you know, that can be hard stuff. And so I'm committed to working on that. But, and having said that, I also wanted to say that the same Ms. Castellano wrote a Black Lives Matter statement on behalf of the town and sent it to the entire town board over a week ago. She and I have done some talking. We're going to meet later this week with our kids. That's like all we could possibly do, and everything else going on. And I'm gonna yield my time to Jen now, because I'm sure she has stuff to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, you know, I'm grateful to everybody who's participated in the public comment period, whether it was, you know, related to the cell tower or to the Black Lives Matter movement. I think it's really refreshing to see so many people interested in engaging with the board on these topics. And in particular, as it relates to Black Lives Matter, you know, I know this board is committed to moving forward. And as Jeremy and others have pointed out, you know, we're all trying to learn as we go, and there's going to be some, you know, fits and starts here as we try and find the best language. I went with diversity and inclusion, and someone who's actually very engaged with Jeremy's efforts, and others on the call, Mina, and some of those who are working with the school district directly, said, well, diversity and inclusion is some dominant language, you know, maybe we could come up with something else. But I think our next steps forward are to develop a committee with the town board members as liaison, and I think it would be Jane and myself that seems to be the choice going forward.
And my suggestion was the Committee for Black Lives.
Right. So that we can continue to explore these issues, because it's a lot of information to unpack. It's not just one thing, you know, it's looking at how the school district can be a great partner there in educating our children, but also we have to own that piece as adults. We're part of this system and we live in this town. How can we encourage diversity in our hiring practices? You know, affordable housing came up as an issue. This hits every part of our society because it is systemic.
For once.
I'm sorry?
For once.
I'm not sure what you mean for once. For once, it's a systemic issue, or?
I would just move on. What were you saying?
Let's.
Oh, okay.
For once.
Okay.
I'm going to say I was a cop. I know what these people go through.
And
it's not about that, Ted. It's really not.
I'm not talking about your friends. I'm talking about being a cop.
Well,
and a lot of you have no idea what it was like. Have you ever picked up someone's
Sorry, but how is this allowed?
That was-
How is this permitted? How is this violent person allowed to speak?
Okay, let's move on.
He is exercising his right to share like the rest of us are, but
God, already.
Why we can't mute him from our end, Catherine? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I could mute.
Like I
Ted,
said, to keep
we're gonna
this
move
piece
on.
short, we are committed to continuing to work on this issue, and this is going to be an ongoing conversation with the community, because this is a group that is committed to ensuring that everyone in this community is treated with the respect and the care that they deserve. And we recognize that really we can't say all lives matter unless we can say Black Lives Matter. We're seeing this unfold over and over again in the news cycle. And so it's not just isolated incidents. It's not something that you can brush off. It's not something that you can ignore and pretend like it's not existing. Just because we're not having these issues necessarily right here does not mean that we're not the type of community that needs to engage in these conversations.
So we plan to make that committee to make it an ongoing conversation, and you can have a more direct line to talking to us. Peter, my instinct.
Can we move on to approve the minutes?
No, because I have to read the resolution. Do you want me to do that later?
Yes.
Yeah, let's go. We have people waiting.
I was asking Peter. So when am I going to read the resolution then?
Later on in the meeting.
Okay.
That's fine. Okay.
We need to we've got people who've been patiently waiting to make a cell tower presentation.
Right.
We've got Dana who's patiently waiting. We've got
Peter. Okay. That's okay. Let's move on. You said so.
Okay.
Let's do it.
I'd like to provide some communications. Simply, we're down to 6 current cases of COVID-19. Secondly, I think it's pretty important that Park and Rec has been working its heart out, and there are, may be trivial compared with Black Lives Matter, but it happens that day camp registration begins tomorrow at noon, and it can be completed online or in person at On a True Farm. The pool will be opening probably registration on June 24th, and it goes on. Next, I'd like to make a motion. I'd like for a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting.
I second.
Discussion, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I'd like to, Ray, would you like to begin your presentation for Homeland Towers? Is Ray on?
Ray is on, yes.
I'm here, Supervisor Parsons. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. Hi.
All right. Thank you, Supervisor Parsons and members of the town board for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I'll try to keep it brief. This is a very early process we're going through, so there's not a lot of details to share, but I just thought we would have this presentation to open the dialogue with the town and the residents for cell coverage or improved cell coverage in this section of town. I'm with Homeland Towers. We are a regional cell tower developer out of Danbury, Connecticut. We simply build the infrastructure. We're not a carrier. We don't provide a network. The carriers such as Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile rely on companies like Homeland to invest in the infrastructure and provide this really critical infrastructure that we do for public safety. It's no longer just a convenience of providing cell coverage, but it's critical. We've obviously been successful in town in building 3 sites as a developer. We've done the Vista Firehouse. We have done the site at the Lewisboro Volunteer Ambulance Corps in Cross River, and we've done the site on Route 138. Just by way of history, there's been a need for this part of town for 20 years. It's always been on the carrier's radar to provide coverage People will say, like they say tonight, I have coverage. Yes, you can maybe get a phone call in and out, but it's really what's called reliable coverage. And as Ted had mentioned, it's holding that call, not getting a drop call, and having a phone call from within your home or on the road. So that's really what we're here to do, is provide that relief for the gap that exists on 35, and not just 35, but the community to the north, the Truesdale Lake community, and so forth. There's a need, and that's why we're here. We're not here because we don't have a reason to be. We had approached the town a few years back by way of history, and the town board and your supervisor felt it was more appropriate at that time to concentrate on the Cross River site, which we did. We were successful in working with the town and constructed that tower, and I'm proud to say that tower is on air, offering cell service and public safety service in the Cross River section of town. So now we're back. It's 2020. The need's still here. We have engaged the town again for 2 sites that are town-owned property, which is the Salt Dome at 81 Spring Street, as well as the, some people call it the Recycling Center, the Department of Public Works, but it's still basically behind the Town Hall at 11 Main Street. We're not proposing 2 sites. We are proposing one or the other. We have completed preliminary site plans that are not detailed as far as exact details. It's more of an overview of site plans, and I'll be happy to go through those site plans tonight. In addition, we have had our vendor, our visual vendor called Saratoga Associates, complete a letter and a visual comparison of the Salt Dome and the Department of Public Works site, and concluded his own conclusion. And I'll let people make their own conclusions as well with both sites. I will tell you, in my capacity with Homeland Towers, when I've been doing this for 20 plus years, I look for an area that has existing structures, be it water tanks, power lines, billboards, rooftops, church steeples, things of that nature. We have looked, we have vetted it. There are no existing structures that work. So when there are no existing structures, you need to build a raw land site, a new tower site. There was a comment by Lauren, I believe earlier, about the site at Mountain Lakes. That site has been reconstructed by the County of Westchester. Carriers have been trying to go there 25 years. They're not allowing commercial wireless providers on that tower. So we have to build a site. And I want to emphasize to the community listening tonight and to the town board that this is the beginning stage. There's a process for this. We're not going to jump through the hoops quickly. There'll be public hearings on this. There'll be ample time for people to review the materials. There'll be ample time to present additional materials. Homeland Towers does not take shortcuts. We do our homework. We will go through the SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office process. We'll go through the seeker process. We'll go through all the legal processes that are required by your town board for a structure like this. So I'm not saying this is going to be where it's going to be at the Salt Dome or DPW site. There may be a private party that comes out of the woodwork during these conversations that has a parcel that maybe suits it better, but there's criteria that the parcels have to have. They have to be able to work for the carriers, and in this case, Verizon Wireless is the main carrier or applicant, will be the applicant for a site here in town. The site has to be able to be constructed. I can't build it in the middle of a lake, obviously. I have to have a willing and interested landlord. And we've sent letters out before to private parcel owners. And if somebody—
Ray, can I jump in just for a second? Because
Sure.
I think something you just said spoke to one of the questions that had come up. And you talked about Verizon being the applicant. So I think somebody was asking, like, oh, why can't all the carriers go on at once? Or, you know, is there sort of industry and regulatory convention here that would help us understand this?
Sure, Dan. Lauren had asked that question earlier regarding why don't the carriers all go on at once. The carriers operate on their own funding or budgets and budget cycles. Verizon has budget money for Lewisboro today. They're willing to go forward with Homeland Towers to do a raw land build. I can't speak for AT&T or T-Mobile. there's a need for them, but they all don't go on the tower at the same time. Typically in the tower industry, what occurs is one carrier will partner with a tower company, in this case Verizon, and there's a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of money expended to do this project. Once a tower is up, it's a type of build it and they will come scenario. So the other carriers, and I can't speak for them, but they will go through their funding and budget process, will make it known to them that there's a tower, like taking Cross River, for example. Verizon was our anchor tenant. Well, we've now let T-Mobile, which is Sprint now, and AT&T know that that structure is built and constructed and is available for co-location. And it's just a matter of time before they come, but very rarely do you see all the carriers going together on a build. It's, they don't all operate in the same budget cycle.
Ray, since we are going with Verizon, or you're working with Verizon, and we worked with Verizon for the Cross River cell tower, I was wondering if you've had any discussions with them about becoming a 5G hub, or if that's something that we can be some kind of testing site for those, you know, advanced wireless communications?
Sure, I hear 5G a lot these days, Jane. And for the folks out there listening, 5G basically stands for 5th generation. It's really getting the signal closer to the end user, going toward those driverless cars in the future and so forth. I will tell you, areas like Lewisboro are really not candidates for 5G. We're seeing the carriers building these 5G networks in very dense urban downtown areas where there's a concentration and you can provide coverage off a telephone pole to a very small area. You still need these traditional tower sites or macro sites. Basically, I explain to people, it's like the mothership. The 5G nodes talk back to the mothership. You still need these traditional tower sites. They're not going away in our generation. That's not going to satellite. The need for tower sites like Homeland's proposing, there's still a need for it. And 5G is something that's, it's a bunch of years down the road, especially coming to Lewisboro.
Thanks, Ray.
Sure.
While we're on those kind of alternative things, you know, in previous meetings on this subject matter, I think, and I'm going to get this all wrong in terms of whatever the technology is called, but some sort of, you know, smaller scale repeater type, you know, micro cell or something like that to plug in the gaps. Is that a thing or not?
Sure. Everybody, I hear this, again, doing this 21 years, we hear these small repeaters, or what's called DAS, which stands for Digital Antenna System. And typically that's a small node to fill a discrete gap in an area. And there is a gap on 35, but it's just not about the coverage on 35. It's about the coverage, as I mentioned earlier, to the lake community to the north and Boughton Road and the residential community further out. And a node on 35 does not go into the residential neighborhoods. The closest tower site you have, Dan, is the town park to the west, and you've got the tower on the Leon Levy Preserve, or the Bell Tower, Bell property, kind of to the southeast, I guess, on 121-35 intersection. And those two bookend sites are about 1.75 miles apart from the center of South Salem Hamlet. So you do need a site. The carriers need a site in this area. There's a science to it. It's not a question of throwing a dart at a map and saying, okay, it's a Salt Dome or DPW. They look for a site that really works for their network. So a traditional tower site is going to be needed. It's not going to be the silver bullet that solves all the coverage gaps in town. There will probably be another site on the North Salem border at some point, although we're working on a site right now in North Salem. We'll see how that goes and how far that site bleeds down for coverage. But there's probably at least 2 more sites that are needed for coverage in town. Tony, if you'd like, you can put up
two more cell towers in town, or two more?
No, this one in South Salem Hamlet being one, Supervisor Parsons, and the other one being on 121 in the north section, town border.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was hoping you weren't telling me that after this I'd got to go through this twice more.
No.
Do we want to, I don't know what your sort of layout of the discussion is here, but do we want to actually do a screen share since we have that technology and that ability to show what the two?
That's what we're about to do. right? Which file, Ray, did you want me to put up?
Why don't you we can talk about the Salt Dome site plan first, and I'll just walk the town board through the site plan, and then we can do the DPW second.
Okay, let's see. Just share my screen here. Okay, I think this is the one, right?
Yes, that's the one.
Let's see.
So this first page, thank you, Tony.
Sure.
Is just an overview of the property. You can see Spring Street and Route 35 to the left. And the parcel is basically 4.47 acres. Everyone knows it's used currently for the Salt Dome. We would come in access-wise from Spring Street down through the existing driveway that is paved, continue toward the Salt Dome site, and then to the right there, we would propose a new access drive and compound. The compound itself would be 75 feet by 55 feet, roughly 4,100 square feet. We are proposing, when I say we, Verizon. Holman Towers does not drive the height, it's Verizon. Verizon is proposing a 130-foot monopole tower. You can see the purple dotted lines. That is the wetland buffer area. We maintain any disturbance outside of the wetland area, which is a good thing. We are proposing to bring utilities off an existing telephone pole to the site and then trench it underground up to the site itself. Yes, that's where the pole and that red line would show the aerial. We would set a new pole and then bring electric and telephone up to the site. These are unmanned sites. They're visited very infrequently, typically every 3 to 4 months by a technician.
So I'm going to throw out something here just out of left field. You know, Carol had mentioned the history at the Salt Dome, which of issues and pollution issues. And I know that sometimes when you guys do these projects, there's a little space in there for certain infrastructure things. If there were additional mitigation measures for this area that would add additional protective value to the existing Salt Dome relative to the wetlands or the waterways there, is that something that we can realistically look towards? I mean, you guys are going to have to do mitigations anyway, so it'd probably be relatively cost effective. And I have no idea if there are such measures, that, you know, but that's what I can imagine. If we could end up with a sort of net improvement to the site relative to this potential of issues with the adjacent waterways and wetlands, then that would be a nice argument in favor of this, you know, of all the different factors anyway.
Sure. I will tell you that we will run a phase 1 on the property like we do on all of our cell sites. We will practice best measures when it comes to our own construction, assuming it's at this location, for any soil and erosion control measures that are put in place. And we'll work with the town on that, obviously. So we can discuss it further.
All right, just leaving that for an open-ended thought there.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we've just put 100,000 into the Salt Dome.
No, I don't think that's unfortunate. That probably is an improvement, again, you know, as far as these pollution problems. But I don't know if there are other sort of, you know, best practice, you know, infiltrators or whatever, or that could be added to the site and give additional levels of insurance. That's what I'm talking about. Not changing the Salt Dome, but adding protective measures. And again, I'm just, you know, I have no idea if there is anything out there that would help this matter, but it would be a good timing for that.
Tony, if you'd like to maybe go to the second slide.
Okay.
And this is just a layout of the tower compound. For reference, the salt dome would be to the top of the screen. Not on the slide, but basically the access drive would come in off the existing gravel drive.
Mm-hmm.
And we would have a 75 by 55 square foot lease area. A lot of people say to me, Ray, why does it have to be that big? We design all of our cell sites for 4 carriers. People say, well, Sprint, T-Mobile are now effectively one. Yes, that's true, but there's Dish that's spinning off of that. We also have public safety that we design it for. Verizon would propose a propane tank versus diesel. So they need a spark zone. So there's plenty of space for us to grow into the compound, but we make sure we have enough for future needs for public safety and the carriers. The fence itself would be, in this case, chain link fence, anti-climbing mesh on it. The sites are secure, they're locked. There's on the left side of the compound, the gray boxes you see, that's the meter bank and the transformer, step-down transformer. Every site has to have electric meters for the carriers to have their own power requirements.
Next page.
Sure. This is just what we call in the industry a tower profile. We are proposing one of 2 designs here, and this will be open for discussion as this project unfolds. But this is a standard monopole tower where the antennas are located on platforms. The equipment is at the base of the tower. In this particular case, Verizon is proposing 26 feet. We call it antenna rad center, the center of their antenna line. But the pole structure itself would be 130 feet. We will, as you see on the note there, keep the top reserved for the town of Lewisboro for public safety. We do that obviously on many of our sites. As I mentioned earlier, this is just not self-service, but it's public safety. It's critical public safety. The next slide, Tony, I think may give a profile of a monopine.
Mm-hmm.
And this is also 130 feet, but the overall height would be 135. And the reason for the 5-foot extension is we typically put a faux top on the tower, the tree poles that we do. So that's the reason for the extra 5 feet. In all essence, it's the monopole with faux branches and exterior antennas.
And Ray, in comparison to the Cross River Tower, that one is 170 feet. Is that correct?
It's 174, top of the tower, I believe. And that's a standard monopole, painted 2-color, sky blue on top and like a thunder gray on the bottom.
Right.
So that's the last slide for the site dome.
Mm-hmm.
We can go over to the 11 Main Street site plan as well. Okay. So that's just a general overview. This particular parcel is almost 6 acres in size. It's got various buildings, be it town hall, highway department, recycling center, some storage, things of that nature.
So if you're driving into the town hall, you would make a right.
Correct.
You go past the town hall and make a right into the recycling center.
Correct. There's a yard there that's fenced off currently. We are proposing a tower location in the far corner. The town owns, actually there's a tree line, the town owns the woods there, but we're proposing it in the open. We don't remove any trees. We want to keep as many as possible. And this particular location, we are proposing a 50 by 70, roughly 3,500 square feet. And again, you can see the E and T on there. That stands for electric and telephone. That would come up from the Lakeshore Drive from the utility that's currently there. Utility pole at least.
Okay.
And this is very similar to the Salt Dome site. Again, it's designed for 4 carriers with space for public safety. Again, there's a transformer meter board. Typically, cell sites, you've got a tower that's in the middle of the compound, and then the carriers have their equipment at the base, and they tie it in with their cables and wires that run up in the center, through the center of the pole and attach to the antennas. This site would be fenced as well with a double gate, 12-foot wide for access to the site. This particular location, we've also put 2 tower profiles before the board, both again a monopole, which is a traditional tower, as well as a monopine. This particular site would be 10 feet lower in height, meaning the top of the pole would be 120. If you recall the Salt Dome, we were proposing 130. The reason for that is slightly higher elevation, but really the location where it is a little closer towards the lake community, about 0.3 miles from the Salt Dome, the way the crow flies. So Verizon does not need 130 at this location. They'll need 120. And we will, as I mentioned earlier, I think the next public meeting, we will have coverage plots to provide to the board and the community and to TED. And they'll show the existing coverage that Verizon has, and the plots will also show the proposed coverage. So folks can understand where the gap is and how this particular site, either the Salt Dome or the DPW, would remedy that gap in service. The next slide, Tony, just has the profile of the monopine. Again, 10 feet shorter, still with a 5-foot faux top. And we've really done some wonderful trees these days. Everyone refers to the one on the Hutch Parkway, but that's 175 feet tall. It's certainly out of place. It's one of the original ones. It looks very sparse. The trees that we design nowadays are just tremendous with the faux branching and really conceal the antennas quite well. Everybody has an opinion about them, but the trees at home and builds are very, very nice. So those are the 2 site plans. We can, if you want to, Tony, open up the Saratoga Associates. There you go. Thank you. So what we did is, and this letter is obviously the public can read it, but I think really to get into the meat and potatoes, if you want to just go to the visuals, you can scroll down. You'll see, okay, so this, so this basically shows a computer-generated image for the site at the Salt Dome of where the site is visible from. The purple basically shows with the earth with trees and terrain and so forth, where it's visible from.
The red dot is the tower. Here's the
Yes.
Salt Dome, right?
Yes, correct.
And these are the camera perspectives, where the pictures that we're going to see?
Correct. So you can go back and forth, and typically Saratoga will go to, and this is a very, we're going to provide a much more in-depth, this is more or less to start the dialogue with the town and show the 2 locations. We will do a more in-depth visual report analysis for the board and the public. But we just wanted to kind of get a feel for what we're looking at here. This is, yeah, if you want to just minimize that slightly. So this is a view from the cemetery, existing condition. This is the South Salem Cemetery, I believe. And this would be what a 130-foot monopole structure would look like, typically galvanized. That is a 135-foot tall monopine tree. And really, if you just scroll through, it shows this is taken from, I believe, basically out front of the town hall, looking over Echo Farm, over the ridgeland area. That's the view that exists. That's the view that would exist with a 130-foot structure. And a pine tree. We think the pine tree actually softens a lot of the views from the hamlet. Some people may have their own opinion, obviously, but we think the pine tree in this scenario lends itself well. This is a shot from Truesdale Lake as it exists. This is a monopole. It's almost impossible to see it, even with leaf-off conditions. It's really, literally to the right of those pine trees, and you can't even see it. If you go to the next slide, you will see the monopine.
Oh,
right there.
That it?
Exactly.
Right there?
That's
Okay.
that's 125-foot monopine at the salt dome, and that is taken from the lake area.
Mm-hmm.
So this next is the locations that were taken for the DPW. Again, the purple shows expected year-round views, again, taking in terrain and leaf cover and so forth. Certainly open views from the water and from the lake community. This is a shot from South Salem Cemetery as well. You can see the 130-foot monopole in the center of your screen there, just above the red barn.
That's the monopine.
There's the monopine. Again, that's 125 for folks looking at that on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
That's a shot from just out front. That's a driveway you see going into the town hall. So that's basically standing in front of town hall, in front of 11 Main Street. That's a 120-foot monopole structure. We show 4 sets of antennas. Each set of antennas represents a carrier.
Wait, I thought the salt dome was the 130-foot.
Yes, the salt dome is 130. The DPW is 120.
So the one we're looking at here, you just said it was 120. This is the one.
DPW behind the town hall.
Got it. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, this is the lawn area in front of the townhouse. Right here.
That's correct.
Right. It's the monopine.
Same shot as before, looking toward the town hall from the lake. That's without, that's the existing condition. That's 120 for a monopole structure and 125 for a monopine. There are some existing mature pine trees on the parcel. They're more in the vicinity of 75, 80 feet. You're still, for this technology to work, people need to understand that it needs to be above the tree line. So typically when you've got 80-foot trees, it's got to be above the tree line for the carriers. This is taken from the cemetery by the church. You can barely see the top of the monopole tower. And then the next slide has the monopine tower again at 125 total height.
Mm-hmm.
So Saratoga put together a letter, their conclusion, just comparing the two sites, apples to apples, and they feel that the salt dome is much less of a visual impact to the community. Now, obviously, people are going to make their own conclusions, but that's Saratoga. They're in the business. They do this for a living, obviously. They feel the site at the salt dome is going to have less of a visual impact to the community. And look, like I said at the top of the hour when I started talking, that if somebody has a private property that we feel is better, this is not about who's going to get the money. It's about having a site that's going to have the least visual impact to the community while still providing network coverage and public safety and having an interested landlord and able to be constructed. If we find a private landlord, and we're going to continue to send proposals out, but if we find somebody that comes out who's interested, we will entertain it. This is not set, slam dunk going on one of the two town properties. This is to start a dialogue. And at the end of the day, Homeland wants to make sure we've picked the best site. And there'll be a process for this. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that any of the town board members may have for me.
Yeah. There is somebody with their hand raised, but Peter, do you have anything to say or questions, or go with the board members?
I've got one thing to say, quite honestly. I believe this is a matter of safety as well as a matter of convenience. I also believe that we're at a crucial time. Verizon landline are clearly abandoning any real pretense of maintaining service in the east end of town where this is. You call them when there's a break in the service on their copper lines, and they happily tell you it'll be 10 days before they get there. I don't believe that Optimum is clearly in this reasonably for the money. And I don't think their money comes really out of telephones. Now, if we want to attract people to buy our houses in the South Salem area, we need to offer them a first-class means of communication. And in my mind, that is going to be cell phones, because I'm sure that many of you, when you talk to your children and grandchildren, know that they are about as likely to pick up a landline as fly to the moon. So we really need effective cell service in this area. That's my own point of view. Otherwise, we're going to end up with essentially no service.
Peter, can I ask you and/or Ray just a quick technical question? Is the intention, Ray, that the Homeland or Verizon would lease the property from the town if it were to happen in one of the two town properties?
That's correct, Attorney Millay. We would expect we would lease one of the two, and it would basically take the same process as we did on the Cross River site at the LVAC.
Okay, because this morning I was talking to Peter, the supervisor, a little bit about the process, and I did mention bidding. But if it's going to be a lease with the town, then there's no bidding requirement. It would be a lease with a permissive referendum. So that's how we'd move forward once we identify a site. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
I have two
Now,
quick
I am
questions.
perfectly open to Echo Farm, for instance, deciding it is a better site and putting themselves forward as a site. We tried the Spire at South Salem Presbyterian, that didn't work. We tried our property on Route 35, that didn't work. Maybe somebody has got the magic bullet, but we don't know where it is.
And Ray, I have a question regarding the, actually, you know what? Jen was,
I did,
Jen, you
yeah.
had a question. Go ahead. Sorry.
I had just two quick questions, and I think it's more for the public, but I know that there are certain requirements for continuous cell service put forth through FEMA and the county. Does this resolve anything with them, or this is just to increase connectivity? It's not, a result of any first responder request. And then the second one, and I think we'd have to look into this further with Echo Farm. It sounds like there's some existing agreement with the land there that's, I guess, a little concerning, unless they decide to enter into that agreement on their own, like Peter just mentioned.
So the first part of your question, Jennifer, no, this is not being driven by any mandate in the county for public safety. This is being driven by Verizon. However, as I mentioned, we will make it available for public safety use.
Right, thank you.
County and so forth. We are getting back title. We expect it this week. We'll look at any conditions or covenants or restrictions. We do that in our due diligence process as part of what we do. So we'll take a look at that. And yes, to kind of echo what Peter was talking about, the farm, Echo Farm, it's an ideal site. It's got ground elevation that reaches almost 600 feet, which is roughly 40 feet higher than the Salt Dome or the DPW. And I think it would lend itself well as an appropriate location for a site, and I would envision a stealth silo as a potential site.
If I might,
we're interested.
Actually, Callie Bauer has her hand up, so go ahead, Callie.
Okay, hi, it's actually Allison right now. I just wanted to say to Peter, when I met with him in my senior year of high school, so that was 3 years ago now, he said the same exact thing about people wanting connection when they come here, but we still don't have it, first of all. And second of all, how many homes have we sold recently to people that are maybe trying to, I don't know, escape their busy city life? People know exactly what they're coming here for, and it's not connection. And second of all, wait, what was I gonna say? Oh, yeah, we are not interested in being a site at all.
Okay.
Thanks.
I'm not saying, Allison, you need to be interested. I'm just saying, I'm just pointing out that of the possible sites, you are one. And we've had trouble locating anyone any private site, which would, other than you, which would be good.
There's someone else, Alex has his hand up. Go ahead, Alex. Alex? Okay, maybe not. Okay. Okay, any other questions from any of the other board members?
There's still 2 hands raised, Tony. I don't know if maybe
there's-
that's from before. Allison.
Allison, yeah.
Yeah, has her hand raised again.
Hello?
Is that sounds like Ted? Go ahead, Ted.
Yes, it is.
Go ahead.
Well, the situation is what town law says in terms of the number of sites that we have to investigate. And we have, in fact, looked at them. It's not a matter of whether the Antenna Advisory Board likes this site or doesn't like it. The point is that it will fill in the coverage that is needed, not just by Verizon. Hello?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm getting some type of, all right. I'm getting some type of feedback or whatever. But it's the matter of providing communications continuity. Now, as opposed to what you have heard in the public comment section, we are dealing with a situation whereby we have to provide this continuity of service. And I don't like it, but it's the best we can do at that specific time. Now, when everybody talks about satellites and things like that, this is what I do. I understand that technology. So if we're going to look at that, let's be realistic. And what cellular coverage and PCS coverage will bring. Is the Salt Dome the best site? It's the best site we have now on town property. As I've said previously, to turn around and consider sites on top of mountain vistas and everything else like that, I'm sorry. That will not work because other people own it. We're just doing what we have with what we have. That's all. I'm not in favor of, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. The Antenna Advisory Board is not in favor of one site or the other. We seek to advise the town with our knowledge as to what we should do. So we're stuck in a situation whereby what is the best site to offend or affect the least number of people. And that's why when the presentation was made, the Salt Dome is the better candidate. That's all.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Rich.
Just a general question. How much, and this is kind of alluded to in the presentation, how much of a monopole or monopine has to be visible in order for it to function as it's designed? You mentioned, you were alluding to the tree line.
Sure.
I'll explain that. The cellular service and future cellular types of service are line of sight technologies. So if you can see it, it'll work. If you can't, it might not work.
And Rich, just to expand on that, let's say, for example, you have an 80-foot existing pine tree, or the canopy is 80 feet tall. You would effectively need to be 40 feet above that tree canopy at 120 in order to make the site co-locatable. And that's with 4 carriers. And the reason for that is when you see these antenna levels, that separation is 10 feet. The carriers need to be separated from each other so they don't interfere with each other by 10 feet. So when you see 4 levels of antennas on some of the visuals that Saratoga prepared, that 4 levels represents 40 feet. And to answer your question, yes, we would need to be above the tree line. You can build the site at 90 feet for 1 carrier. The site will be expandable because the next carrier in your code requires it has to be co-locatable. You would have to put an extension on that pole. But typically, it's line of sight, as Ted mentioned.
So let me dumb it down for myself. Let's say you have the 135 feet elevation. Mm-hmm. Let's say theoretically you could do it that you had a screen of 90-foot evergreens in front of that pole, just to understand the functionality of it. That is that's what you'd need to have in order for it to be functional, if I'm understanding?
If it's located in an area where there's trees. Now you can put it in an open field and make the argument, well, why can't you make it 10 feet tall? There's no trees around. Well, it's terrain driven, obviously. And when we provide the coverage maps at the next meeting, and we won't just provide them to the board at 130 feet for Salt Dome or 120 for the DPW, we'll provide it at 130, at 110, at 80, various heights, so the board and the intent advisory board can get an understanding of how the site performs at lower heights.
Rich.
Thank you.
Rich.
Yes.
When
okay, so I feel like once again I'm cutting in and being a little bit rude, and I'm really sorry about that. But I feel like this conversation is just like a little bit out of control, and it's hard to even know whose agenda is this, and what agenda are we putting forward, and why as a member of the town board do I feel like I am not part of the agenda at all. Again, it's really, you know, I'm having a tough time building up to even what it is.
Okay, there's one more person that has their hand up. Susan.
Okay, so we'll just ignore what I said and go ahead and move on.
So are you saying we need to wrap this up, obviously, and move on to the...
I'm saying we need some kind of order to this. We are all over the place. Who's talking? Who's leading the meeting? Who's on board? I mean, these are the kinds of conversations we need to have that aren't happening. And I've been struggling with this for so long and been quiet about it for so long that I have to say, I think it's pretty clear that I'm just running out of patience. I feel like I've demonstrated a lot of patience.
All right, Jane, but part of our job as a board,
Peter, I know what part of our job as a board is. I still think that this particular meeting, in addition to many meetings that have gone before it, in addition to feedback we've gotten a lot, is not being managed well. Who's muted? Who's unmuted? Who's talking? What are we talking about? When are we following the agenda? When are we having these discussions? Is this the place?
We are right online with the agenda at the moment.
Right.
There we go.
So,
ladies and gentlemen,
go ahead,
I
Susan.
will
Susan
add
has,
this.
Yes, Susan, Enos, and then I think we should move on.
Yeah, Susan, and then that's it.
This is Lou, actually.
This is Lou Enos.
Hi, Lou.
Very short question. When this is proposed at greater length, will you please give us a house count, meaning each residential house in each of the 2 locations that could see the antenna proposed?
Geez, Lou, you live right around the corner from me. I will tell you, you will not see the antenna.
So
end of story.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Let me just jump in. So Ray is part of the cross.
Answer the question.
I just did.
Maybe Ray can answer that because
Dean Travelino is going like this. Dean Travelino would like to make a comment.
Okay, but let me just touch on that question. Ray, would you do a balloon test like you did in Cross River so everyone can see with the tower?
Exactly.
That'd be great.
We will do a balloon test, and we have no problem publicly noticing it, and we could do it on Saturday. So
great.
Hey, Sue and Lou, you live right around the corner from me. You will not even know that there is something there.
I thought that the efficacy around the balloon test was not.
Go ahead, Dean.
I remember doing the balloon test over at Cross River, and then once we
Just
did the
figure I
balloon test,
waited
there was
so
like
that you go.
efficacy issues and like, is a balloon test really necessary? So while I love the idea of a balloon test, and if residents wanted to see what it's going to look like, I want them to go ahead and do that. But I want to make sure that we're using what we've learned in previous experiences going forward. And something I learned is that the balloon test is not as efficacious as one would like.
Okay, am I up?
Yes, you're up.
Yes.
All right, I just didn't want to be left behind because I waited till after the presentation, like I was told to. And
Thank you,
Jane,
Dean.
and to all the young guys on the call, and Jane, I'm really sorry, but I didn't do the agenda. I'm just answering what I thought was the main thing on the agenda. Otherwise, I support you guys are really great to be so active here. I just want to say that I was at the meeting about 3 years ago when this was brought up the first time. I don't know whether Ray was the person making the presentation or not, but it was a lot more driven by AT&T. At the point was that AT&T would not co-locate in the hamlet until we put up the one in Cross River, because they wanted to be able to publish coverage maps that shows that they have coverage all along Route 35. And then you could build one with Verizon here, and then they could get AT&T at the other one at the same time. That was the number one thing talked about. There was a lot of skepticism about any of the sites in the hamlet. And the board at the time said, let's move on to Cross River. I may be wrong, you can look at the minutes, so. Let's move on to Cross River. In the meantime, we want to see coverage maps for other locations. And that's where I think that we were at. As far as coverage itself, look, I know Homeland Towers, I know they're a great company, they help us get these things, but they're a broker, like a mortgage broker. And they procure sites for towers. And they say what has to be said to get them done sometimes. I like to have a little more skepticism. It's a hard decision, but anyone who lives in the special character zone knows that we make hard decisions all the time. We have to go to ACARC anytime we do anything to our homes. A new fence, a new stone wall, a new porch. Well, the town should be doing the same kind of a minimum effort. And, you know, just a little bit of skepticism. Ted knows more about this, I'm sure, than anybody on this phone call or on this meeting right now. But does that mean that Lakeshore Drive will not be covered by a tower that's an Echo Farm? Because I don't think that AT&T cares. They just want to have a coverage map on Route 35. If the county is going to swoop in, do you think it's tenable for them to say that we have to have coverage, but you can't use Mountain Lake dams? I don't think that dog hunts. So I'm just worried about is too much taking it for granted for-profit companies and what they say. And the other thing is economic damage. You have two nonprofits severely affected by both of these actions. Both nonprofits have put a lot of money into their facilities. St. John's Nursery School and the Lewisboro Library. And they're already tight for money because of the current crisis. And I don't personally believe that cell towers are dangerous for children, but people do. And this can affect both of their livelihoods. In Connecticut, you have to disclose if your house is haunted or not. Legal requirement. That's all. Those are my factors.
Hey, Dean, can I just say a couple of things? First off, AT&T has got some financial problems. Now, you're a
We all
guy
have
that...
financial problems.
Huh?
Everyone has financial problems.
No, AT&T has overextended financial problems. Now, this is something which makes it different from Verizon. And what it is that they spend a lot of money in what's known as FirstNet. I'm not going to get into that. But what it is that this is a public safety network consideration. So, with that, they are turning around with their cell sites and implementation. They are not doing like one site at a time. They're going to do 3 and 4 sites at a time. Why? It saves money. And as a result, Verizon might turn around and put up 2 platforms in the town park. AT&T can't do it. Verizon has, there's other things involved, but what it is that AT&T...
Will they make a lump sum payment to the library at St. John's Nursery School?
Oh, come on, cut the crap.
Ted, I don't want to interfere with that too much. Just one other thought. There are the legal requirements of placing a cell tower. There are also the legal requirements of the law separate to that. Can you promise more than what you own? Are there limits to what the town can go ahead and encumber towards the future? The town bought development rights over Echo Farm in order to keep it preserved, a farm found in 1825. This hamlet is a special character zone over the whole hamlet. The town spent a lot of money fixing up the townhouse. Hopefully Dan would agree with me that the hamlet's important to me and to Dan also. So when you take all those things, and in order to buy those development rights, they were bought as a right of first refusal. So you buy development rights as a right of first refusal. In that, I wasn't involved with the transaction, but I remember at the time in the news, they also granted Keith and Callie the right to build another building lot on there in case like some wealthy person wanted to buy it in the future in a practical way and keep it preserved as a riding facility, as opposed to condominiums or something else. Can you grant a house lot on a property, buy a property on a right of first refusal, and then go ahead and then devalue it with a cell tower? That may not be legally a tenable position. Not for me to say, but these are separate from cell tower issues. These are environmental issues. These are quality of life issues. These are rural character issues. I mean, AT&T has their problems. I have problems, okay?
Well, Drew, I'm sorry, Dean, I'm sorry, because this past year, Supervisor Parsons has quadrupled my salary. So as a result, I am taking this into deep consideration. Bottom line is, I don't know.
You're paid more than I am as the chairman of the cable committee, so we're even.
Right, but see, what we're going to do, what is needed, and you understand this, there's a hole. And what people don't understand is that it's not a matter. Let me put this in another way. Do you think the cellular companies want to put up a tower to provide redundant coverage? I don't think so. What they have is a hole, and the hole is longer than the timeout timer allows. What that means is that when you lose a cellular call, there is a certain number of seconds that are allowed before the call is dropped. So that's what they want to do.
All right, but how about other sites? Well, here's a question for you then, as cable today.
I know them all.
But why is it that the town, that the town Park Tower failed to help out Truesdale Lake? Why is it that I still can't get cell service at Cross River? How many times? Fool me 3 times, shame on me twice.
All right, Drew. All right, Dean, I'll explain it. The cell tower in the town park has a certain level of coverage, plain and simple. You are not going to get coverage into Truesdale Lake. I mean, maybe a little bit, but not a lot. Now, again, I always.
I thought it was Twin Lakes that you said before. I'm sorry.
No. Well, what I want to say is this. I have a well-meaning committee of people, of civilians, that want to learn about this stuff, but I'm the one that actually knows about it. You know it, I know it. The problem is that there are holes in coverage. And the bigger the hole, the longer the time it takes to reacquire the signal, the greater the chance that the call will be dropped. Obviously, if they don't hear from you, I have to open that set of frequencies to someone else. Hence, that's why we have that. I'm not in agreement or disagreement with that location, nor is the Antenna Advisory Board. When people talk about, yeah, okay, we'll do it in Twin Lakes. Excuse me, you insult my ability in that I hadn't checked that out already. I sure did. Many years ago.
Ted. Thank you so much. I'm going to call for one more round to wrap this up and move it on.
Okay, thank you.
I was going to ask Ray what he would like to do next in terms of this. Obviously, we come up with coverage. At some stage, you're going to need our wetlands.
All right. I'm losing this.
Why?
Peter, you're coming across garbled, unless it's
terrible.
Okay.
You're not coming through real well. Maybe turn off your video.
Low bandwidth.
Low bandwidth, exactly. There's Susan has had her hand up. I don't know if she wants to say something. If you do, Susan, go ahead and speak. Susan? No? Okay. Alex, you had your hand up?
Oh, thank you. I appreciate just a very quick follow-up. I would just like to challenge the notion that we absolutely need, this is a legal requirement. This is a pitch from a for-profit company to earn some more money. They've spotted a reason why, but it is not anything that citizens are currently demanding overly. And I'd just be a little wary that although Cross River was perhaps an important gap, this is less so, and I'd just take that into consideration before forging ahead with a for-profit company. I'd just also like to say quickly that, Ted, I'm very suspicious when someone says that their intelligence is insulted. Please, if you have done all this research, release it to us so that we can read it. If there is every other thing that has been exhausted, please let us know. Please let us know all the technology that is not available, which I disagree with. There is other technology out there.
Oh, really?
And it's not a case of you being an expert and everyone else being an idiot. It is very much a case of we're trying to organize and discuss, is this essential or necessary? And if so, what, how, and where, especially with the new things online. And I don't think that there is any insult of intelligence when people question some of these decisions. Thank you.
It's not a matter of insulting intelligence.
Peter.
Oh, geez, Peter.
Peter, you're still, we cannot hear you. You're still coming in garbled.
I seek not to.
Maybe try dialing into the, on your other phone.
Maybe you should just leave the meeting and rejoin. It sounds like a controlled Alt-Delete. You guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, he can dial this.
Yeah, we've had this issue before, Ted. So he'll.
All right.
We'll try this again here. Let's see.
But I would like to explain a couple of things. I'm quite familiar with the technologies. I'm actually an industry professional. There are many people that, well, are members of committees because they are well-meaning citizens, as are my members. There's nothing wrong with that. But in the same respect, I seek to teach them and instruct others, as well as to explain to you what these technologies are.
I think Ted, I think he was just talking about your way of couching these things and saying that's an insult to your intelligence. It's just that this is an open forum, and people have some thoughts that they want to get out and some ideas. You know, we should let those flow. That's all.
But in the same respect, Dan, I would like to answer these people directly. It's like it's not a matter of.
That's fine. It's just leaving the editorial out about, you know, who's insulted.
But it helps. Dan, in my opinion, it helps. If in your opinion, okay, I have no problem. I am nobody. I am just a guy that has had his salary quadrupled as chairman of the Antenna Advisory Board by Supervisor Parsons, and I am thankful for it.
All right.
But I'll be glad to help.
The joke there is that he's not getting paid, in case that was lost on
All right. How are we
I
doing?
think while we wait for Peter to get back on, maybe everybody could mute themselves so we get ready to go forward.
This is what I'm going to do while we're waiting for Peter. Is I'm going to go ahead and read this resolution because it was supposed to be read at the beginning of the meeting. So I'm going to do that while we wait for Peter. Yeah, no, that's, yeah. Oh, I don't know. I don't know what Dan's trying to tell me. He said my name and then put himself on mute. So I'm not sure.
Can you post it, share it, so that people can actually see it while you're reading it?
Oh, okay. I'm gonna do my best on that, but I was not prepared to do that, so that might not happen.
Click the little greens.
Oh, it's not that I see the share button. It's that it's a Google Doc, and I'm not sure. Can I share the Google Doc on there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, but I don't know how to do that. You guys, I would rather read it than have you walk me through the technology right now. Sorry.
Maybe I can share it. Let me see if I can.
No, well, that's actually a Word doc. That's fine. Share that. Good. That would be fine.
Oh, it's not the same now?
That would be just fine if you wanted to share that version,
Okay.
and I can read along. It's pretty much the same.
Make a mess of things.
Yeah, no, you're not. You're trying to be helpful. I really appreciate that. This is really messy, right? That's kind of the point. Is that these are all messy. So I appreciate.
This is just technically messy. This is not the other kind of messy.
No, they're both messy.
I'm calling Peter in the meantime.
Okay.
Okay, so
looks like Peter's back on, just muted. So if that's
great. Okay, so I'll go until he interrupts me. So now I am going to take my time because my instinct is to go really fast, especially because I'm very nervous. I don't like to take up a lot of time, but I'm going to slow down and take my time because what I have to say is worth saying. And I'm going to dedicate my effort to that space and time to Black lives. Okay, so I was asked to define anti-racism almost in a challenge on social media. And my first instinct was to go ahead and work super hard to gather all the knowledge I could on what that could mean and come up with the perfect answer for what anti-racism means. And as I did that, I thought, well, I'm an occupational therapist, and we took classes. I went to graduate school for that, and we took classes in which we would try to define occupational therapy. And so part of the work that is done in anti-racism is not being able to pin it down and that was right. It's more of being committed to an effort. So I could give you my definition of anti-racism right now, but I don't think that would be super helpful. And I will think about it more. And if it is helpful, then that's something I will share further on. What I do want to share, however, is I collaborated with some community members, educators, marketers, social workers, and people who are experts in the realm of anti-racism and Black Lives Matter and the movement for Black Lives. I want to try and keep this conversation centered around Black lives as much as I can, because as we get further down this road and understand it a little better, the point is when Black lives matter, that's when all our lives will matter. So that's pretty complicated. I want to read this resolution. So in 2017, the town board at that time came up with a welcoming resolution. At that time, our federal government was shutting our borders. Immigrant protection was really at the top of everybody's minds, and being welcoming and inclusive was the language we were using at the time. But much like this work, the part of it is you need to keep up with the language. So it's a constant education. And so 3 years later, now we've taken a look at this and we've updated it, not just for the current situation and time, but because that's what this work requires, is a constant revisiting and updating. And I'm going to, oh, we still can't hear you, Peter, sorry. So I'm just gonna go ahead and read this resolution until you figure that out. So the other resolution was called the welcoming resolution. This one I'm calling an anti-racist resolution. I'm going to read my copy because I can't go up and down here. Okay, so this is an anti-racist resolution of the town board of the town of Lewisboro for June 22nd, 2020, built upon the welcoming resolution of the town board of the town of Lewisboro for March 27th, 2017. Whereas in recent weeks and months, both the nation and our community have suffered acts of intense anti-Black racism, anti-Indigenous racism, racism against people of color, and white supremacy, as well as anti-Semitism, queerphobia, transphobia, sexism, ableism, classism, bigotry, xenophobia, and hatred. Such acts including police brutality against BIPOC, which is Black, Indigenous, people of color, there's a footnote there for those of us that are learning, the looting of Black bodies, the use of racial slurs, defacement of buildings with swastikas, and the bullying of Black, trans, queer, disabled, Latinx, and non-white students in our schools and community. Whereas the town board of the town of Lewisboro has decided it would be both irresponsible and dangerous for the town to continue ignoring these pressing human rights violations. And whereas the town board of the town of Lewisboro has been asked to consider the adoption of a statement revising its policies and practices in order to foster a safe, open, and welcoming community, and one which not only decries and denounces acts of anti-Black racism, anti-Indigenous racism, racism against people of color, and white supremacy, as well as anti-Semitism, queerphobia, transphobia, sexism, ableism, classism, bigotry, xenophobia, and hatred, but also commits to being an actively anti-racist and affirming community. Whereas the town of Lewisboro will not tolerate the persecution of people because of their national origin, race, religion, ethnicity, gender identity, sexual orientation, ability, citizenship, immigration status, age, socioeconomic status, or any other legally protected status, and is prepared to take any affirmative steps necessary to protect against such occurrences and hold those responsible accountable in a fashion that forefronts the values of restorative justice. And whereas the town of Lewisboro is committed unequivocally to upholding the basic human rights of every individual in celebration of our diversity and in acknowledgement of our violently unequal history, while adhering to the requirements of the United States Constitution, the New York State Constitution, and state and federal law. Now, therefore, be it resolved, 1, the town of Lewisboro is committed to upholding and protecting the civil and human rights and safety of all individuals, regardless of their race, religion, ability, ethnicity, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, immigration status, age, national origin, or socioeconomic status. As part of this commitment, the town recognizes that upholding and protecting the civil and human rights and safety of one historically oppressed community does not come at the expense of any other historically oppressed community, but rather helps ensure the protection of the civil and human rights and safety of all such communities. Further, the town recognizes that social categorizations such as race, class, and gender, as they apply to an individual or group, are interconnected and create overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination and disadvantage, known colloquially as intersectionality. 2, the town board is committed to uplifting, affirming, and centering the voices and experience of Black, Indigenous, and non-white Lewisboro community members. The board will work to represent all the diverse identities in the town. The town of Lewisboro recognizes its violently unequal history and acknowledges that the present lack of diversity in our town is the result of deliberately segregationist practices, including but not limited to redlining, discriminatory lending, white flight, discriminatory criminalization and policing, and prohibitive taxation. The town further recognizes its own racist classist practices related to the sustained rejection, relocation, and deferral of the development of affordable housing. The town of Lewisboro commits to addressing these injustices and working actively to address and undo the effects of these policies today and in the future. 4, the town of Lewisboro acknowledges its historical participation in the genocide of indigenous people of the Lenape Nation, the cooptation of their land, and the violence the town of Lewisboro still perpetuates against the Lenape Nation today, as we continue to live on land stolen from them, and the town resolves to accept the full weight of this history and harm as a first step toward collective healing. 5, the town of Lewisboro recognizes that the aforementioned inequities and injustices in the town have resulted in the centering of white people and voices in the culture and curriculum of the Katuna-Lewisboro School District, which harms all of our students and families, especially Black people, Indigenous people, and people of color. The town of Lewisboro acknowledges this equity and injustice and commits to rectifying these issues in the school district. That one, I would have to say there's not much we can do about the curriculum of the school district other than to support these things in the community, but there's nothing we're going to be able to do about the curriculum or specifically with the school, two totally different jurisdictions. I'm a parent and I'm a town board member, and you know, that doesn't help. 6, while the town of Lewisboro currently carries out its public safety operations primarily through its police department and the New York State Police, the town will begin to engage community members such as young people, educators, social workers, activists, public defenders, and faith leaders to imagine and enact alternative approaches to public safety that do not rely on the policing, criminalization, and incarceration of community members. This commitment is born out of an acknowledgement that the Lewisboro Town Police and the New York State Police, like police departments across the country, rely on oppressive policies and practices that result in the disproportionate criminalization of Black people, Indigenous people, people of color, and lower income individuals, and that such alternative approaches to public safety are critical to the safety of our communities, regardless of their demographics. 7, in carrying out its work, the Lewisboro Town Police and all other departments of the town of Lewisboro will not inquire about an individual's immigration status. That's already true from the welcoming resolution. 8, the town board will disseminate and publicize this resolution throughout the town and all schools, libraries, public spaces, and via email to all residents, and commits to ensuring this declaration is printed in all languages utilized by residents in the town of Lewisboro. I ask the town board to accept this as the draft that I proposed. The welcoming resolution can stay as is. I think this should stand on its own as an update. Thank you for your time.
Okay, I would like an opportunity to read that before I vote on it, because I've been doing other things. And I know there are some relatively small things in there, at least, that I disagree with.
I wonder if you could elaborate. There's several references to our violent racist history, and I think you are referring to specifically to Lewisboro. That's not a generic, like, you know, national comment. Is that then referring to the Lenape history and that piece, or I want to just bring
I guess that's one way that you could look at it for sure, but I think that playing our part in the violence is that continuing to live in a town that is this white and not asking ourselves why, or figuring out solutions as to how we could increase that diversity or even create a culture in which that's welcomed. So I think it's been violent in a lot of ways. I think that people have pointed out to the violence in the way that, you know, we've even been talking to each other in this meeting. So when we talk about our history, I think concretely we could be talking about how, yes, white people came here and we pushed the Native American Indigenous people out, and it's a whole long history lesson and that I'm not prepared to give right now, and I'm running out of my articulate self, I have to say. But I think that when we speak to violence, I think that I'm a little bit biased because I'm anti-gun, and I'll put that right out there. But I have to say that when I'm talking to somebody who has a gun on, that to me is a power dynamic that's uncomfortable for me because they can kill me. And so that's how I feel going into a situation where anybody is open carrying a gun, whether it be a police officer or a civilian, as Ted said. If I, you know, am in a grocery store in the South where open carry is allowed, that threatens me. That scares me. You can kill me, and that's real. And even though I should trust that you won't, and I am a protected white woman, I don't have that much fear of it. It still makes me nervous. So I can't imagine if I felt like I was, you know, being hunted, so to speak.
Okay.
So I think it's the way that we talk to each other and don't listen to each other, and the voices that are amplified or heard or related to or understood can make people outside that conversation feel like they're missing something, when really we're not missing anything. It's just that we're not including other kinds of ways of talking and relating into conversations. We're just so used to doing things the way we do them.
I think where I was just reacting is like in terms of this as a communication, the fact that a lot of people, when you say the word violence, they're thinking physical, hands-on violence, you know.
Well, there's definitely that with the violence of Indigenous people, right? So that's what, so concretely, yes, Indigenously, there were people who lived here on this land, and then it was colonized, and then those people were killed and pushed off the land, and there are these far-reaching consequences today. Native American reservations are not necessarily the best places to live. With the population that's left, you've got the pipeline out in South Dakota. We are not treating our Indigenous people right. We deployed Doctors Without Borders to our own Indigenous community. Like, we don't care. And even the way we're talking to each other tonight, we are not imparting that we care. I think that
before we get deeper into this discussion, can I have Ray?
Yes,
Ray
please.
Ray
No,
has
let's let
been
Mina
waiting.
answer it, because Mina would be my words anyway. Can we?
Yeah.
Jane, can we finish with Ray Vagati, please?
Yes, I was going to say that.
Okay, can we let Mina speak and then we'll finish with Ray?
We're kind of being very rude to Ray.
Okay, that's fine. Sorry, Ray. I will take all the responsibility for that, and I apologize. Mina, do you feel comfortable, or do you want to wait?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I can go ahead. Just a quick note in terms of, there's been a ton of scholarship, anthropological scholarship on structural violence that's not necessarily violence in an embodied way done to individual people, but it's a community level violence that I think this language could also apply to, that I would be happy to sit down and talk to people about on an individual or group basis at any time. Yeah.
Yes, please. We'll pull you in for a group. Sorry, Ray. I'm really sorry I co-opted your meeting.
Ray, what I'm kind of interested in is what you think the next steps should be. You've said that you clearly want to do an area plan showing a coverage plan.
Coverage maps.
Yeah, coverage maps. At what stage are you going to go to with the wetlands inspector, for instance?
So I'd like to be able to present the coverage maps. If they're ready, you meet in another 2 weeks, I presume, the board. If I have the coverage prior to that, I'll share them with the board. But I'd like to try to make the next agenda in 2 weeks to present the coverage maps as I discussed earlier. And we still want to do some due diligence, as I mentioned as well. Title is expected in this week on both properties. We'd like to review that in depth. And at some point, I'll reach out to Attorney Mollet and have that discussion as well about the lease. And we're not going to stop doing our due diligence on other properties. So I guess to answer your question, I'd like to shoot for the next town board meeting, Peter.
Okay.
Provide coverage maps at that point.
Okay, thank you. And I'll see you at the next town board.
Great. Thank you all for giving me your time this evening. Have a good night, everybody.
All right,
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Moving back to the...
There's a couple of other questions. We want to go ahead. Andrea Rendo has her hand up. And Richard Ostroff. Andrea, go ahead.
I just, I wanted to comment on Jane's resolution. You know, it's my understanding that resolutions are particularly voted on for things that the town would like to strive to do. And to that end, I give Jane a lot of credit because I know she took a lot of time and effort to put it together. Just a couple comments. One, I think it's long because I can tell that she's very impassioned by what she's saying, and I just think that it could be shorter. That's an editing thing, that nothing else. Also, some of the language in there, you may want to consult with the town attorney about, because I could see it as maybe causing some issues for the town, because what we strive to be and what we want to be is very important. But I think some of the language there, Anthony Moley might want to review with you in an effort to making the resolution better, more concise, and even better. So thank you, Jane. But that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Andrea. I super appreciate that feedback and you stepping up to engage in the conversation, and feedback well taken. Please know again that this is a first draft. So 2 weeks ago at the board meeting, we agreed to relook at the welcoming resolution, and I took upon myself the task of presenting the board with the first draft. So it's certainly meant to be reviewed by the entire board, as Peter said. I wouldn't expect a vote on it tonight. And Anthony and I are working hand in hand. So we'll continue.
Is it going to be circulated or put out there for some of the residents to see? Or, because I hadn't seen it before you put it up on the screen.
Right, yeah, that's a first draft. So now it's there. Will a draft be out there for the community? I have no idea. I don't remember the welcoming resolution process, and I don't remember that being a process of any resolution before. But if that's also one of your recommendations, I'm happy to take that down.
And it could just go in the minutes if nothing else.
Oh, that's true. I just remember being at the meeting. That's why I don't remember.
Typically, a draft of a resolution wouldn't go to the public till the town board approves it, and it is an actual resolution of the town board.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
So we have a few other hands up. Three. Do we want to go ahead and?
Okay, but bearing in mind that this is far from finished.
Yeah. So Richard.
Hi, it's actually Terry Altman at 7 Main Street. First of all, I think it's great, everyone that's talking about Black Lives Matter and the resolution being introduced. It's definitely a little strange how we keep flipping back and forth between Black Lives Matter and the cell tower. So, and I'm going to ask a question about the cell tower. So I just want to acknowledge that it's really a little surreal. With that, on the cell tower, I understand that, you know, it's inadvisable to have this gap in coverage. Is there some kind of state mandate or law that says we can't have the gap, that we must put up a tower to cover the gap? Or is it just that we don't feel right about having a gap in coverage?
No, I mean, I'm going to say that I don't think there is. There's nothing that forces a town to, you know, a municipality or municipal government to build a tower, where there are laws about that the municipality can't, you know, unduly get in the way of the construction of a tower in various ways.
Okay, so we've had this question a couple of times. So I just want to clarify. People are asking, and Ms. Castellano asked this at the beginning of the meeting, is there any legal requirement from the county and the first responders to put a cell tower in this area? And the answer is no, there is not. And Ted very eloquently told us multiple times that it is a gap in coverage. It's a hole that we're trying to fill.
Okay, thank you for re-explaining it. And I'd like to say that the town it seems like we're spending a lot of money for something that isn't a mandate, even the research. That's it. Thank you.
I am hearing that. I'm hearing that from you and multiple others tonight. So that's noted.
Thank you.
It's a hole on a very major road.
And I got that. It's not a big hole, and the town has gone to a lot of effort to cover that road.
On the side of the road, it could be a very big hole.
But also the town is not spending the money on this. This is the...
Let's understand.
We make money on it.
No.
Right.
We as a town are not spending money to have this site.
We're not spending money on the research, all the research we're doing now?
No, we are not.
Just wanted to clarify that. Okay, why don't you go to the next?
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
that,
I understand it's not a law. I appreciate you telling me again.
Okay, 2 more hands raised.
thank you. Yes, Mina. Mina?
Hi, me again. I just wanted to really thank Jane and Jennifer for agreeing to spearhead this committee on equity and racial justice in our town. And I really appreciate the hard work that you did, Jane, to put together this initial draft. And I'm excited to see how it progresses forward.
Okay, thank you, Mina. Sebastian.
Thank you.
Once again, I'll be echoing Mina. I also want to thank Jane and Jennifer for this. As a citizen, I really like the language. I think it creates accountability. And you guys, it's a great first draft in my personal opinion as a citizen.
Thanks, Sebastian.
Okay, I'd like, unless anybody else wants to speak, I'd like to move on.
Yes,
All
let's
right.
move on.
I think I can allow
Jane,
for that.
Jane, let's accept yours as a first draft, and let's, I'd appreciate if you could circulate that to members of the board and anybody else who requests it, so that we can make individual comments, detailed comments. I think everybody agrees with the spirit of what you're saying. It's a question of making it, if possible, shorter and looking at a couple of specifics in there.
I can appreciate that. I will circulate it to you and the board, and anyone else who wants it can get it from you.
Okay.
Part of your minutes.
Move on to proposing a resolution to approve the Katona-Lewisboro School District agreement for a gym lease and authorizing myself to sign. Will somebody propose this?
I propose
go ahead.
I propose that the supervisor approve the Katona-Lewisboro School District agreement for the gym lease, and I authorize the supervisor to sign the lease.
Second.
Discussion? Quite honestly, it's one hell of a good lease, which I want the school to sign quickly.
Right. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, guys, we've got a lease from our point of view.
Good.
I would like a discussion regarding the addition of a portion of lease to towaway zone and setting a public hearing on that. This comes at the recommendation of Chief Alfano, who believes that in order to make this finally work, we need to be able to have an enforcement which will also work to deter people from parking there and from holding parties in Long Pond Reserve and jumping off Castle Rock. That's the whole thing.
So the portion of Mead Street that we're talking about is the same that we just made a no parking zone?
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
It's a question of how do we best enforce that? And I think, and the chief is convinced that a towaway zone is the best way to enforce it. If we agree, then I think we should set a public hearing.
Sounds good. Do we have towaway zones in other places in town that we found to be? It sounds scarier than just no parking or something.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Have we had? I was driving on Mead the other day and I saw a couple of parking tickets stuck in windows. So Chief Alfano, have we had a lot of ticketing there? And how will we let people know we're going to start towing other than this? And that's not for you. That's for the board. I was just wondering, has anybody made any complaints? Have we had any follow-ups? And I have seen ticketing. Has there been a lot of it?
So there has been a lot of ticketing, Jane.
Okay.
And it doesn't seem to get the point across. I think the towaway zone would be a good idea. I actually spoke with the Frank Secret, who was 2 chiefs ago, if everyone's not aware. And he actually said when back in the day, it was a tow-away zone. So somehow the language was lost in the town book. But yeah, he believes it was a tow-away zone. And there are current tow-away zones in town. The Spring Street lot, the town park, and I believe any of the town, Ontario and Fox Valley, off the top of my head.
And will we sign that? And that's for the whole board, including Chief Alfano, because I'm sure he would know. Will we put signage up? Is that how we do it?
Yeah, basically it'll be the no parking signs, and then below it, there's like a little sign that'll say tow-away zone.
Okay.
Right.
In the city
Have we
and stuff like
seen
that.
any decrease in the use of Castle Rock?
It's still pretty bad. I mean, every year there's an injury or two. I've met with the owners of Castle Rock, and it's become a pretty big issue and a concern of theirs and other people and members of the league and the community, coming from all over. It's all over social media. I mean, for instance, we've had people from Darien, Connecticut, the Bronx, all over, you name it. I mean, they're driving hours and they're piling in cars to come here, and they're leaving trash. They're drinking alcohol on the beaches. I mean, it's just, you can't keep up with it.
I think it's
safety concern.
totally out of control.
Yeah.
And we need to get it under control. And it seems to have got worse over the years.
Right. So there's a quickness here of we just made it no parking, and now we want to make this, and we just had the public hearing on that, and we closed it, and now we're moving very quickly to the tow away. That's just fast. Is that what Dan said? I agree that it's fast.
Jane, I mean, I'm sorry, Dan, to step over you, but this is something, if we implement this, like, we're not going to just start towing cars the next week, the next 6 months from now. We'll probably wait till next summer.
Right. Okay.
Put notices on their cars, tow away zone, just like the reduction of the speed limit throughout town. You know, we're not going to run out there and just start writing tickets and start.
Really?
That's just not how it operates.
Okay.
Give warnings. We're going to educate the
kind
public.
of like the plastic bag ban. We're rolling it out. We're rolling it out.
Yeah, we're educating everybody, you know, for a good year.
Yeah. Right.
All right. I would like to set a public hearing on a tow-away zone for Mead Street on Monday, July 6th at 7:30 or as near as possible to
Peter. Hi, it's Janet. The next meeting is July 13th.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I can't read.
I thought that's what I had in the calendar. It's typically the 2nd and the 4th Monday of every month.
Done. July 13th.
So you made that motion and seconded.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
I'd like to move on and ask Dana to take us through the rules she wants to impose on the pool when it comes to admission.
I would like to propose that we have a Blue Lives Matter.
Hey.
Okay, go ahead, Peter.
I want to go back. I want to go forward. I've got a lot of items on this agenda to get through, and I've also got a meeting early tomorrow morning. All right?
Yeah, let's go to Dana.
Correct, but Blue Lives, this is like, but we have to address it because it happened, and it was a pattern. It started happening at the beginning of the meeting. I tried to redirect over and over and over and over, and now here we are with the Blue Lives Matter, and it's not okay because it's directly, that's a direct, so if we're being anti-racist, Blue Lives Matter it's a directly racist thing.
Go fuck yourself.
Oh,
Blue.
Is there any way that you can mute him? Anybody? Anthony, as our lawyer, is there some parameter here around a volunteer and around this interaction? I mean, I am super uncomfortable. What?
Put him out into the waiting room, please, Tony.
But now, that's it. That's it. We have to get here to where I'm being cursed at. Seriously? This is where it has to go, Peter. This is always where it has to go. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Jane, I have said that we will discuss this after the meeting in executive session. All right?
You're muted, Jane. You're muted, Jane.
All right, Dana.
I am
Yes,
muted.
sir.
Yep, I was muted. That was not on my end, just so people know.
Dana.
Yes,
can
sir.
we get into the rules for fees at the pool?
Okay. First and foremost, I know I'm going to make a lot of people unhappy tonight, and I apologize ahead of time because our hands are held tight with this COVID. We went out to the pool last week, and unfortunately, we found out the pool can only hold a capacity of 47 to 57 sheltering in place households so that social distancing can come into place. The Park and Rec Advisory Board, as well as my department, spent many hours discussing how to go forward with COVID regulations. And it is the recommendation that we do offer town resident permits as well as gate fees for town residents, at least to begin with, so that we know that we can handle the capacity. And if the capacity isn't being met, we will open it up first to school district residents who use our school facilities and are able to use our programming, and then go out further to non-residents of either the school district or the town. The fees that we're proposing is the town resident family fee at $350, which is pretty close to half price for the season, or the prorated for the weeks that we lost. A town resident adult would be $225 for the season. The town resident senior adults, we feel should just stay at the $60 for the summer. And the gate fees would be continuing to stay at what they were advertised last year, and this year at $15 for adults, $10 for children. So those are our proposed fees, if you all agree.
So how does that, so first of all, number one, we're sort of tuning the rollout here by starting with residents where we were a little bit more open before. And you're doing that as a consequence. I'm just trying to restate it, make sure I understand it. You're doing that as a consequence of more detailed look at the site and how we were going to have people arranged in order to meet all our needs. So if I'm understanding that correctly.
Oh, sorry, Dan, excuse me. Just to follow up, we had almost 90 town resident families last year apply for a pool membership. So the fact that we can only hold 47 to 57 at a time out at the pool, I mean, that's a little over half of the capacity.
Right, right. And then secondly, have you looked at, you had some revenue projections and all that associated with that. And again, I'll preface this by saying this doesn't mean I'm not in favor of doing it anyway, but just so we know what the numbers are, how does that look when we revise it like that?
There won't be, with the first proposal we gave you, we felt we could meet the expenses for opening the pool and operating because everyone was paying a gate fee, and that was under the assumption that most days it would be at 3/4 of the capacity, figuring weekends would have full capacity, and if we did sessions, there would be 2 sessions. During the week, there was going to be we're going to do it at the door, first come, first serve. So, but with the memberships to keep going to the pool affordable week after week, I can't guarantee we're going to meet the goal.
I guess it would be good to know. It's just like, again, sort of as a sensitivity thing, worst case, 50 families, just so we know what that number is. Leo will need it, for his budgeting and just go through that process.
I know, but unfortunately, Dan, it is 90 degrees all week this week.
Yeah.
And our phones are being flooded about when we can open.
That's
So,
fine. Well, there's certainly no harm in.
No, I'll do it. But we
set.
really do need to open up registration so we can open up the pool.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's like exclusive to that. That's my part. Anybody else have anything to add?
Where did we land with the discount for first responders, or how we were going to go forward with that? I know that
that was going to be my next discussion.
Proposals. Yeah, I know we had a couple different proposals out there. I know you called around, to LVAC and the fire departments to see what their take was on that, and wanted to see where we landed.
That was going to be part 2 of my conversation.
Oh, there we go. So
I just want everyone to agree on the dollar amounts first.
Okay.
I'll go with your judgment, Dana. If that's what you think it should be, then I'm all for it.
Okay. Then the second part was, in the past, we have given free memberships to...
Sorry, Dana, I'm here. I agree. We've already talked about it. And so I agree to the fee structure. Also, we already answered your questions via email, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
I think we just brought it out in public so everyone could hear what we discussed via email. So,
okay.
The second part...
I'm not going to turn on my video, but I'm here.
The second part of it was the emergency services in town are vital to our community.
Right.
I know that, not even living in town. I rely heavily on all of them. The 4 houses, LVAC, Goldensbridge Fire Department, South Salem Fire Department, and Vista Fire Department and Ambulance Corps. And in the past, to help with recruitment, help with sustaining their membership, we have given their families a free pool membership or a tennis permit each summer as a thank you for serving their community and donating their time and energy to saving lives, saving structures. But this year, with COVID and the lack of the ability to welcome everybody into the pool, we came into the pickle of how to proceed with our emergency services this summer and charging them for the pool. Last year, there was approximately 56 families of emergency services that took advantage of our service at the pool only, not even tennis. And I feel that if that happens this year, potentially the emergency services could use the pool and residents wouldn't be able to get in too. I mean, if all 56 families showed up, then that doesn't leave much for the community. So we were trying to come up with a welcoming compromise for this year only is my proposal, so we get through the COVID and the restrictions. And to be honest with you, as we all know, the phases as they go on could loosen up some of the restrictions and we can increase our numbers out of the pool. And our team is ready to jump at that opportunity and to get more people in to help with the revenues. So it's what we do with our emergency services. There was many proposals on the table, one being they pay 50% this year only, another having dedicated time once a week or once every 2 weeks for just emergency services to use the pool free of cost. Peter, did you have other suggestions?
No, just the 50%. The 2 services which use the pool the most are, not surprisingly, South Salem Fire Department and LVAC.
Serious echo.
Peter, you have to turn off. You're logged in twice. So.
Hold on a second. Where is he?
Yeah, if you
Both of those
there you go.
have agreed to the 50% rule. I also gather that Vista, Ambulance, and Fire Department had. The only one I haven't heard from is Golden's Bridge, but quite honestly, Golden's Bridge, for geographic reasons, has never benefited as much as the rest of the town. I don't think that we should. I think 50% makes sense because that's what we already offer town employees. That's my point of view. I'd like a motion to approve the fees as Dana has proposed them.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you, Dane. Oh, Dana, while you're there, I'd like to make a motion to make an agreement with Storm Aquatics so that they can use the pool for $60 an hour. It happens to be at a time of day when virtually nobody else would ever use it. Secondly, I'd like to make an agreement with High Dive Champions at $40 an hour with a similar caveat about the time of day they get to use it. Any comment, Dana?
No, just that they will be using the pool before the pool even opens to the day camp or to the public.
Well,
so
that means not much conflict.
No, and it's distancing and everything else.
Did we discuss guests and school district members?
Yeah, that's a good point, Jane.
We have decided.
So in my opinion, I'm just going to give my opinion and I'm going to mute myself. So I think that we should allow school districts and, like Jen suggested, 2 guests per family.
I think Dana is proposing, and I would agree, that we do not allow in school district members who are outside the town until we've figured out how many residents want to join. If we, in fact, appear to have room for the full school district, then we'll go for it. And way before we go for non-residents. But certainly we would go for school district residents once we're assured we can offer them something.
Right, and I think that's what we had discussed via email coming into this, was just trying to be flexible. I mean, Dana and her department have gone above and beyond in trying to, you know, crunch these numbers and figure out how many people we can get into the pool. Is this financially viable for what would the fee structure look like? So I think that we're all willing, and certainly her department's willing to be flexible to open this up to additional people if we feel like we're, you know, lacking in terms of membership or admission for the season.
Is that what can you live with that, Dana?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Because we have non-residents and school district residents that have been part of our pool for over 20 years that we're heartbroken that they can't come in this year, at least in the beginning. And the guests, I feel like 2 per family is the way to go.
Right.
Okay, so can I just clarify that I was agreeing with Jen with the 2, and I suggested letting in district, like school district people, and then Peter said no, and then Jen agreed, and now we're leaning yes. I just am trying to clarify because I need to go slow, and I need to slow us all down.
Okay.
Is that right? Am I right? Can somebody clarify that those steps happened?
Jean, I think we're saying no to school district residents at the current time.
Thank you.
We will change course if I mean, because again, we don't know what COVID fears are going to bring us with pool registration. Our hope is to get everything out tomorrow to the community and to our past pool members, all of what we've just discussed, plus a little bit more tomorrow, and start registration on Wednesday. And my staff is willing to work late and come in on Saturday to get pool permits done so that we can open next week.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. I defer to you and your team. I just wanted to clarify for myself, and I appreciate the space and time to do that.
Not a problem, Jane, anytime.
Okay, we've already passed a resolution agreeing with Dana's proposal, correct? So let's, right, Dana? We did pass that resolution.
You got the fees. Janet, did they get the two clubs?
The Storm Aquatics and the
Yes.
dive.
But
Yes.
you never did a second on either one of them.
I second both of them,
Can I
Janet.
have a second?
I second both of them, Peter and Janet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 I would like to move on to, I'd like to excuse Dana if she wants to have a reasonable bedtime tonight. Or
Bye,
maybe
Dana. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Dana.
Thank you, Dana.
I'd like to move on to propose, can somebody propose that we extend the agreement for Cheryl Newberger of Janelle through 7/31/20 for the 65 Old Bedford Road property? Can somebody propose?
So somebody needs to
so
authorize you to sign something?
Sorry?
Yeah, so I authorized the supervisor to sign the extension, excuse me, of the real estate agreement with Janelle Real Estate, which governs the sale of the 65 Old Bedford Road property.
Do I have a second?
Dan seconded.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I would like to, I would like somebody to propose a resolution approving Sugarbush Parents Madava Sugar Maple lease and authorizing myself to sign that lease so that they can come up with maple syrup from Brownell Preserve, from a portion of Brownell Preserve.
And I understand that, you know, like OSPAC and all the various stakeholders are okay with this, that the history has been okay with them, and when there are issues that they're responsive and all that. So it would just be a continuation of that relationship. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
They've been cooperative in in showing people around. They have been, and quite honestly, the area of the preserve which they, where they tap the trees, is the area which is less beautiful than the west end. They tend to be concentrated in the east end of the preserve, and it's the west end which is, in my mind, by far the most beautiful.
Well, good. Then I move that we authorize the supervisor to sign the agreement extending the lease with Madava Sugar Maple for Brownell Reservation.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, Dan, I would like you to tell us how to save 10% on our electricity bill.
So we're trying to ratchet this forward, you know. In fact, maybe I'll share this. Hopefully I have it here. You know, we've signed up the small accounts, and that's the lesser of the savings opportunities, but it's still some $400 or $600 a year or something like that. But the big opportunity is with the large electric accounts. And remember, we can serve as an anchor tenant for one of these new solar installations that are going in. And it's still in the development phase. They're working with the financiers to lock it all down, but they'd like us to sign an LOI, which basically a letter of intent, which basically captures the main aspects that are going to go into the final agreement, but that way they can kind of go back and use that to support the construction. It basically sets out, again, that key for us is this 10% discount. So we get the solar credits on our bills and pay for them at 10% discount, yielding almost 10% discount on our entire power bill. And it's independent of the of any supplier that we might pick. So, you know, it doesn't keep us from switching suppliers or anything like that, because it's only on this credit side of the bill. So they're looking for us to sign this LOI, and Anthony's taken a look at it, didn't see anything that looked like a problem for us. Bedford's already signed it. So I'd like to propose that we authorize the supervisor to sign this letter of intent with Lodestar Energy for the signing on as an anchor tenant for the upcoming solar project.
I will do that. Okay, somebody proposed, oh, Dan's proposed it.
You consider that a resolution.
I second
Who will
it.
second it?
I second it.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Dan?
Yes.
While you're talking about Sustainable Westchester, I signed on for a personal 10% discount. Can everybody in the town sign on for that?
That's right. Excellent. Excellent.
Now, can you make this point? Because I really don't understand why anybody, we've only got 60 takers, I gather, on that.
Yeah.
Anybody in the town can save 10% on their electric bill simply by filling in a form. It's a bit of a bitch of a form, but it's certainly worth 10% of your electric bill.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's 10%.
What did you just call it? A what of a form?
It's a discount.
Sorry, I called
is
it.
what he meant.
It's a.
I'm kidding.
No, that's probably not what he meant. What did you say? You're sorry. You said what?
I said it was a bitch of a form because.
I have a problem with that language, but we could talk about
Okay,
that after the meeting.
it was an annoying form because there is at least one phrase in it which is which you're required to find a number, which is a pod number.
We are like
I may be the only person who doesn't know where the pod number is on their electricity bill.
FYI, on my back always.
What? You know. But
yeah.
I think everybody should find the pod number, which is on the third page, and fill in the form and save themselves 10%.
Thanks for reminding everybody. Yeah, it is kind of an obvious advantage that residents have largely not taken advantage of, or an obvious perk that comes out of our participation with Sustainable Westchester. If you don't have the ability to put solar on your own roof, which is always the best thing to do, because that's solar energy and clean energy that wouldn't be out on the grid otherwise, you know, do that. But if you don't, and probably 80% of people or more, because of shade or because of problems with the roof, or maybe they're renters and they don't own the roof, this is an opportunity for everybody. If you have a power bill that you pay, then you can sign up for this. And you can unsign at any point, but if you stay with it, you can have 10% savings for almost up to 20 years. So go to Sustainable Westchester or solarizewestchester.org, or get in touch with me and I'll tell you how to manage that.
And I'd like everybody on the town board, if they can, to not only subscribe themselves, but to talk to their friends and see if we can get a sort of thing going here where everybody ends up, or where a lot of people end up joining.
Yeah, it's really important actually that we get good pickup on this, because we want to maintain the support from these developers so we can carry this forward into the next phase, the next year, when we can really broadly deploy these savings over the entire Westchester Power participation. So
We can use all of our communication platforms for that. So we can send it out on Friday to remind people to sign up. We can do it on social media with Janet and Jen at the clerk's office. They'll be happy to put that up for us, as they have with all communications. The library will put it out, and we can put it on social media. So
I agree.
Great.
And I'm sorry about my language, but it is getting late.
I appreciate that. And I think that it's important for people to know right now that Peter and I are actually really good friends. I know that that might be really odd and that you might want to know a whole lot more about that. Part of what's really tough about this position is that he has shown me more kindness than many people who were supposed to in my life. And that may be hard to see in this interaction, but having to be in a position where I have to defend him is also not someplace I want to be. So you can,
all right.
him. I understand it, but please don't do it to me because it doesn't help.
All right. I think we have completed everything on the public agenda.
Actually, Peter, there's the Onitru first floor census training.
Oh, hell, well done. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
And claims.
And claims.
Right.
And what? Oh, and claims.
And
yes.
claims.
All right. I got.
Oh, the money, Peter. You forgot the money. That's our main job. We're CFOs.
Great.
I was gonna say we don't have Leo to keep us in line here tonight.
Yeah, Leo decided to take the evening off.
And just so everyone knows, we have, you know, let's try to get through this quickly because we have about 6-7 hands up, people that want to talk, and I suggest we give them an opportunity to speak.
All right. I would like to go. All right. I got a call from the Federal Census Bureau. They need somewhere to teach census workers, and they need 2 rooms next to each other with a bathroom. They were having real difficulties finding this anywhere in northern Westchester, so I have offered them Onitru on July 17th, August 4, 6, 7, 8, and 10.
For doing that. Peter.
What?
I said thank you for doing that.
Because they need somewhere, and thanks. And I will. I've given them certain conditions. The main condition is that they clean the bathrooms every day. Not all the bathrooms, but the bathrooms on the ground floor. Secondly, they will use the back door only. Third, they will sign in a book with contact information. And finally, I want them to sign a waiver saying that they will not sue us. Anthony, any ideas of what else I should put in there?
No, it sounds like you have it covered, Peter. Like I said, you can allow the census folks to use a town facility. Many municipalities do. It's no real issue in terms of liability. You can ask them if they have an insurance policy to provide you additional insurance. That's about it.
Okay. You should know that initially they turned me down because I didn't have bus service at Onitru.
Yeah.
And neither did I have a train service on Elmwood Road. But then eventually they decided that there was nowhere in northeastern Westchester which offered these things. What was the next one, Tony?
The approval of claims.
Oh, I'd like to propose that we approve claims. I've been through them. And secondly, Leo has done a very good summary.
Okay. A second.
Yes.
Discussion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Peter, could you technically do a resolution, though, for the use of Onitru? You need a first and a second.
I do? Okay.
Oh,
I'll propose it. Will somebody second?
I second.
Discussion. All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, so can we go to these questions now? I'll
Yes.
start with Taylor Walsh. Taylor.
I don't believe I was the first to raise my hand. I believe that was Sebastian Singh. So I would let you.
Okay,
But you're
I'm
the first to be noticed, so
you're at the top of my list here.
It's the display. So yeah.
Okay. This is gonna happen from earlier on in this meeting. I just wanted to voice my distress at the verbal abuse that Jane Crimmins was subjected to by Ted. I was a little bit more concerned as well with the relative lack of response by the rest of the board members in condemning that and expressing their support for Jane. That was just really upsetting to witness, and especially as she was trying to maintain a sense of order in the meeting. So that was just very upsetting for me, and I just wanted to address my statements.
Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor.
Next person.
John Anthony Lafredo.
Hi there. I had a statement prepared earlier. I will not share now, but if I could email it to the board maybe at a later date just so you guys could review it, that would be great. I just want to echo what Taylor said. I think that if you expect residents to show up to these board meetings and be able to engage in conversations as sensitive as anti-racism, Black Lives Matter, I expect a higher level of respect from the leadership team and the board members, because these are very difficult conversations to have. Ted's comments were very inciting, obviously, but I would hope that once he is removed from the group, that the rest of the people present can proceed in a conversation with a higher level of respect and sensitivity. I agree with what Taylor said. It was very inappropriate the way that nobody spoke up to, you know, support Jane as she had to face Ted's comments. So just going forward, when we talk about issues of race and anti-racism, that we all just proceed with a greater level of respect and sensitivity.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Next.
Sophie Phillips.
Yeah, I'm going to echo what both of them said as well. It was extremely disturbing to see that, and to see that the board did not acknowledge it at all and then continue to use inappropriate language. So I think, like John Anthony said, going forward, need to watch the language and treat this topic with more respect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie.
There was a fourth, you said.
There's three more.
There's
Terrence Chang.
Okay.
Hi, folks. So I completely agree with the previous speakers. I can only add that I'm really angry. I'm really angry and I'm mortified. I've already emailed the board. I've emailed Peter and the board members. Ted should not be allowed to serve, volunteer, be a part of the town officially or unofficially in any way. That behavior was completely unacceptable, and it is completely unacceptable and mortifying that there was no immediate response to such absolutely repugnant behavior. So I absolutely expect to see a statement that he is removed and banned in any way, shape, or form from engaging with the town further. That is absolutely bizarre, and I don't even have the words for what we just witnessed tonight. And I'm so saddened and disappointed that the town board did not immediately rise up and say that that is wrong and that will not be tolerated. So I hope that that was a result of your stunned silence, that you could not believe that this was happening. That's what I hope. So I really, really expect that we are going to see much, much better in the future. I am furious right now. And I really hope that our elected officials, no, don't cut me off, Peter. You
All
like
right,
to cut
but I'm
people
trying
off.
to get people
No, Peter. No, Peter.
into
no, Peter.
executive
no, Peter.
session.
No, Peter. No, you can wait. I do board meetings until midnight. You can do board meetings till midnight. Okay?
Okay.
You have repeatedly cut people off when talking about Black Lives Matter. You have repeatedly cut people off when you are out of your comfort zone. You will let people spiral and wind and twist and ramble over the cell tower interminably. But when we are talking about serious things, about lives and about the respect for our compatriots, the people that work and serve this town, and you don't have the decency and the professionalism to step up right away when somebody uses such blatant profanity, racist language in our town? You're the leader of this town. Step up. Do better. That is all.
Thank you, Terrence. Who else wishes to speak? I can't see anybody, incidentally. I've lost all screen contact.
Hold on. That's because you were echoing, so I moved your other connection.
Thanks.
I think we had Sebastian and then Ava.
Yeah, go ahead, Sebastian.
I don't have Terrence's hope that you were stunned, members of the board, especially you, Supervisor Parsons. I'm ashamed that you are running this board in such an uncivil, unthoughtful way. And I think you should be ashamed too for how you handled that situation.
Okay.
Thank you, Sebastian.
Is that it?
Thank you, Sebastian.
No, Ava had her hand up.
Ava,
and I think
Celia.
she still does
Go ahead,
if she
Ava.
wants to contribute.
Yes, thank you. I just want to echo what everyone else has said. And also just to say, I too am appalled by the way that this board has treated other members of the board and also citizens who have come here today to voice their very legitimate grievances and visions that they hope to see this town engage in the future. And Supervisor Parsons, I think it's just really, it's not only disrespectful, but it's unacceptable how you have treated the people who are in this committee today. And I just, again, want to thank Jane for all the work that you are doing and for clearly raising issues that other board members don't seem to be willing to raise or engage in. And also for everyone who seems to be very defensive when these issues are brought up, that's just like more evidence of the reason why we need to be talking about these things. And these are things that are obviously uncomfortable, but Supervisor Parsons, your unwillingness to engage in them is just like, it's just hard to wrap my head around. I don't really have much else to say.
Okay, there's only one thing I would say is that people have the right to speak. Even if we hate what they say, they still have the right to say it.
But you cut people off all the time.
Peter, I disagree with you that somebody has the right to tell me to go fuck myself in a meeting. I don't think that's appropriate. I really don't. And I also think the bitch of a form is like, come on, I know you, like, I know it could be a slip. I also know it wasn't thoughtful. I also know you're getting a lot of heat. I also know how hard you work. I also have said to you time and again, you know, of this group, believe it or not, he's been quite an ally. That he's said from the moment he met me, he's been in.
The next meeting is on July 13th. It will presumably be another Zoom meeting. The state has to tell us that, but I am 99% sure that they will in fact tell us to continue Zoom meetings through quite a bit of July, if not the whole of July and August.
I just want to also, I'm sorry, really quick, I just want to apologize for my language. I'm feeling super angry, and so I just repeated things that were said to me in an effort to own them, but me saying them is also violent, and so I apologize. The violence should be over.
Okay. The next town board meeting is on Monday, July 13th, 2020 at 7:30 via remote access. I would like to propose that we adjourn into executive session to discuss personnel appointments.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor? Aye.
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 So thank you everyone for showing up to this meeting. And
thanks everybody.
Staying up with us.
Thank you again for coming and participating. It really means a lot to have such a showing.
You bet.
And we know we have a lot of work to do, so Thank you for being part of the conversation and part of the solution going forward. We appreciate it.
Take care, everybody. All right.
Have a good night.
Okay, good night, everyone.
All right, we've got to dial in again differently, right?